Committee on State Affairs will come to order. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Staffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Here. I think they do it up there. Let's see. That is,
There we go. I got it.
so the chair lays out House Bill 4281 by Representative McQueenie and recognizes our colleague, its sponsor, Senator Hancock, to explain the measure. Morning, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a long time. Less than 8.5
Seems like
hours.
just hours ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And members, House Bill 4281 is regarding crowdfunding, such as the platform of GoFundMe has become a popular and effective way to raise funds for various causes, and many times in very good reasons and for a good purpose. Unfortunately, there are criminals who hear of tragic stories and create fake crowdfunding campaigns claiming to be family or friends of a victim and looking for help. So they use this platform for false purposes. The occurrence happened in my district with the McElroy family, who's here today. House Bill 4281 will hold criminals accountable by allowing the individual or estate to pursue the fake campaign culprit. Additionally, it will grant the victim the ability to collect 125% of the donations fraudulently collected. So this seems very common sense. But until it happens to you, you really don't think about it, and I think we probably see it more often than we realize.
Thank you for bringing this to light, Senator. Members, any questions for our colleague on House Bill 4281? Very well. We'll open testimony, and the chair calls Melanie Dow. Now, welcome. Get situated there and introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay? My name is Melanie Dow, and I'm here in support of House Bill 4281. 18 months ago today, the night before Thanksgiving of 2023, my twin sister, Lauren McElroy, and her family were driving from their home in Fort Worth to my parents' house in Johnson City to celebrate Thanksgiving with our entire family. They were only 20 minutes away when a drunk driver crossed over the center line of Highway 281 and hit them head-on. Lauren was care flighted to Del Seaton here in Austin in critical condition. And while I am so grateful to be able to say that she is here in this room with us today, we were completely devastated and broken to learn that night that her husband, Zach, her 12-year-old son, Judson, and her 9-year-old daughter, Lindsay, did not survive. The following days were a living nightmare for our families, friends, and children, as we juggled between wrestling with the loss of Zach and Judson and Lindsay and worrying over Lauren's recovery, both physically and emotionally. During this time, while Lauren was still in the ICU, still intubated, in and out of sedation, and recovering from 3 separate surgeries, my husband, Jim, received a call from close friends of ours in Fort Worth asking if we knew the names of 2 people who had set up 2 separate GoFundMes to pay for Lauren's family's funeral expenses. The family pictures they had used were from the news stories. They had also misspelled Lindsay's name with an E and not an A in both. We did not know either of these people, but Jim made a couple of calls to the McElroys to be sure that these weren't well-intentioned, long-lost friends of theirs. They were not. In the midst of the most painful and unimaginable time in our lives, this was a horrible thing for any of our families to have to think about at a time when we should have only been focused on taking care of Lauren and of each other. And while we were very grateful that we had friends who genuinely wanted to help and resolve it for us, we really hated that they had to deal with it too. It is truly unbelievable that someone could use another's pain and suffering to falsely enrich themselves in this way. And it makes me sick to think that these people tried to do this to my sister within 3 days after the loss of her husband and her children. I hate to think that any other family going through a tragedy such as Lauren's would have to worry about something like this during their time of greatest need. House Bill 4281 is a step toward correcting the wrong that was brought against my sister and the memory of Zach, Judson, and Lindsay, and it is reassuring to know that it will prevent this from happening to others in the midst of loss and heartache. I hope you'll support this bill, and thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for having me, Chairman Hughes, and thank you for carrying this bill, Senator Hancock.
Thank you for being here. Senator Hall, do you have questions? You're recognized.
Thank you. Actually, my question is much for you, but for our attorney here.
Oh, go ahead.
Why is this not fraud? I mean, this is criminal, what you're talking about. Now, it's not a morally criminal, and absolutely should be a civil, but why is this not any different than forging somebody's name on a mortgage or something of that nature?
Well, there should be a lot more remedies available. I like what Senator Hancock is proposing because you can go after the person. They're doing this for money, right? And so I think there may be some criminal remedies. I'd like to know about that as well. But I like being able to go after them and get back what they did, and then some, and also being a deterrent for folks doing this in the future. I think you're right. I'm sure a prosecutor could probably charge it. I'm not sure about criminal law, but you're right. It's obviously morally evil, no matter what the law says about it.
Yeah, this is one of those crimes that's got a level of evilness to it that not only is it a crime, but it's just morally disgusting. So,
Thank you, Senator Hall. Senator Hancock, any questions for the witness or anything to add?
No, just pointing out that, I mean, that's kind of where we were, was shocked, and I think very few of them are pursued. We're not sure what happened in this case or whether there was any justice brought. And so because of the financial piece of it, this does provide an incentive to actually go after these people where I think typically, you know, there's not much you can do about it at this point.
Thank you for, after going through all that, sharing what happened and helping to protect others in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against House Bill 4281? Very well. Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed, and we'll leave the bill pending for now. Senator Hancock, thank you. Let me see here. And the chair lays out House Bill 3385 by Representative King. I was making sure I was getting all yours before we didn't miss any, Senator. House Bill 3385 by Representative King, sponsored by Senator Hancock, and recognize our colleague to explain the measure.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just spent the night so I could be first in line. Well, House Bill 3385 is really based on, and I brought the report, over 100 pages from the TABC and their recommendations and report regarding on the wine industry and the study that took place in the state of Texas. Currently, wineries in Texas operate under a general G permit. While this allows for the wine production, distribution, and direct consumer sales, it doesn't require the use of Texas-grown fruit. As a result, many wineries report grapes or juice from out of state, leaving our local growers behind. And I think early on, it made sense. We just didn't have that abundance of grapes. We've matured to the point that we can be like most other states that are known for their wines. And that's what House Bill 3385 does. It shows the maturity within the market and time for Texas to move to the next level of being a wine-producing state. This would create a new Texas farm winery permit for producers who use Texas-grown grapes. This optional permit, so it's not a mandate, it's just an optional permit. It would allow up to 5 tasting rooms per permit holder. It would raise the production cap of 250,000 gallons per year and establish a farm winery marketing assistance fund, a dedicated fund to promote Texas-grown fruit and the wineries that support our agricultural industry. This gives Texas wineries the opportunity to compete, grow, and thrive while also supporting our farmers in rural communities. So it really is focused on the agricultural side of the wine industry, which I think until this time, we probably weren't mature enough and didn't have enough farms out there, but and vineyards out there that we are there now.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hall, do you have questions for the sponsor? Go ahead, you're recognized.
now, I don't know enough about this, but I have had small wineries in my district, multiple ones, call very concerned that this bill was going to hurt the small wineries. And I don't have the specifics, but I'd like to find out more and talk with you about that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure unless what they're doing is saying that they have Texas wine and using grapes that were not grown in Texas. And so this just really, again, it promotes the agricultural side of the wine industry, and is an optional permit that if you choose to, you can get this permit that shows that you're actually supporting the full wine industry instead of just the bottling and packaging and blending wine industry in the state of Texas. So it's really what's happened in the states that have more of a mature wine industry and an agricultural side of it.
Okay. I'd just like, once I find out a little bit more about it, I'd like to,
Yeah, it just clarifies is what it does is whether you're really using Texas grown grapes or you're producing Texas wine using grapes grown outside the state of Texas.
because I know we don't want to do anything that has an unintended consequence of hurting one part of the market.
Yeah, I
the
think this
benefit
just
of another.
provides transparency and better communication with retailers on what they're actually purchasing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Hancock, thank you. I want to clarify something too. Thank you for explaining this. It's so, as you say, there's some wineries grow their own grapes or some of their own grapes and some bring them in. But under this bill, if you're a winery, whether you grow your own grapes in Texas or you bring in other Texas grapes, you're still covered. Is that right?
Correct. I mean, this doesn't prohibit anybody from claiming to be Texas wine. What it really does is promote the agricultural side or the grapes grown in the state of Texas. And again, it's fairly common. You see that in grapes grown in Oregon and Washington and California, that not every winery in California is. Most of them are purchasing grapes and wine, and it allows them to identify, for example, whether they're growing their own or they're buying others. And so that's what Texas is. And like I said, we just didn't have the abundance of vineyards in the state of Texas to really make that classification, and we've matured to the point now that it just provides another classification. Still Texas wines, just an additional permit on top of what we've already got. It doesn't change anything for the smaller ones that choose not to use Texas grapes. We're not forcing anybody to use Texas grapes. We're just identifying in order to promote the agricultural side of the industry and help continue to grow the industry in the market.
No, thank you. Senator Paxton, you're recognized.
Well, I'm just going to echo sort of what Senator Hall said. I do have several of the smaller wineries up in my district and in my area that are very concerned about this negatively impacting them economically. So I'm looking forward to hearing the testimony.
Yeah, and once again, this is a TABC recommendation, and as anybody that knows and has dealt with this industry since 1935, change is very, very difficult in maturing and growing a market. Very similar to what we were talking about with craft breweries. I was there and helped negotiate that deal, that it was going to put everybody out of business, and what it actually did was grow the business, didn't put anybody out of business. It just expanded the market. I don't see this putting anyone out of business. I see it growing and supporting an industry that is maturing, and it's time for us, based on the report and recommendations, to kind of move to the next level that we've seen other states do.
I think some of the wineries, though, do feel like it puts them at a real disadvantage.
Yeah, I remember all the beer folks thought that allowing craft breweries would put them at a disadvantage. So change is hard for some people.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the sponsor on 3385? Thanks, Senator. We'll call the witnesses. We have a resource witness. Is any Senator Hancock or members, y'all need the resource witness for anything?
Please.
Okay. Would chair calls Matthew Cherry, TABC. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent, and I think there'll be some questions for you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Matthew Cherry, Senior Counsel for the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, speaking on the bill.
Senator Hall.
Okay, well, my first question would be, you heard the question I asked. Explain how this bill will not be damaging to a small winery.
Yeah, I think there's been some confusion that I've heard out there. I think some people think that what's going on in this bill alters what's already authorized under a normal winery permit in Chapter 16 of the code. So what this bill does, it does not impact any operations or anything that's already authorized under a winery permit. It doesn't change any of that. That stays the same. This is an additional authorization if you get this permit to do some additional activities specifically pertaining to Texas-produced wine.
Okay, and what is the purpose of making this change?
I mean, I'm not sure what the purpose is. I think that's
How do Texans benefit from this change?
I do think that this would potentially increase just, I guess, the sales and production of what is referred to as Texas wine. And if you are a permit holder and you're producing Texas wine, the bill also authorizes you to have 5 additional locations that are tasting rooms without having to obtain an additional permit. Whereas under the current law right now, if you wanted to have additional tasting rooms, you'd have to apply for and get 5 different additional winery permits. So there's a big cost to that. So under the bill right now, those additional permits would not be required. You automatically get an additional 5 locations.
These are locations other than at the winery.
Correct, yes. So you would have a winery permit because that's a prerequisite to obtain the farm winery permit. So then if you obtain this, you would then have your location that has the winery permit and your farm winery permit, and then you would automatically be able to register or operate 5 additional tasting rooms that are located elsewhere than your main farm winery permit.
Okay, but if you're say you're using a mix of Texas fruits and out-of-state fruits, is it 100% or 50%?
Right now under the bill, it is 75%.
75%. And so if you don't have 75%, you don't get the 5 locations for tasting.
That would be correct, yes. But you could still produce that type of wine. You would just be producing that under your normal and what the current winery permit is.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Senator Hall, you asked, how does this benefit Texas? I think I tried to explain that. It again, once again, encourages the agricultural side of it and encourages the use of Texas-grown grapes by Texas wineries rather than importing from other states.
Okay, well, I just want to, is the 75% any particular type of grape, or is it collectively all of what's?
Collectively, the only requirement is that the grapes were grown in Texas. But it's not a specific type of grape outside of it being a Texas grape.
Okay.
It just reduces the regulation so you don't have to get 5 permits, you can just get 1.
And Senator Baxton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Cherry, for being here. So Senator Hall asked you what was the purpose of the legislation? And you said you were not sure, but isn't this a TABC recommended? Is that what I understood to be the case?
Yes, well, it was
Why would
referenced in our last session. The legislature asked the agency to do a study on the wine industry during the interim. And as a part of that study, one of the things that we were supposed to do was look at other states and how they have authorized more than just a normal winery permit. And within that, there's a number of other states that have a farm winery permit. And so that was a big topic and discussion in our study that we presented to the legislature at the beginning of this session.
So the purpose is to just do the same thing other states are doing?
Yeah, I would say yes, but with a focus on state-grown wine, because that's what each of those other states' farm winery permits are all about, are grapes that are grown within that state.
And I would say not just what they're doing, but what they're doing successfully, then it has expanded their industry within their states. And we've got the report, we can get it to your offices, that has input from everybody within the industry. So it's 100 pages, so it's pretty extensive. But we're trying to build off the success of other states.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hall.
Yeah. Does Texas grow enough grapes that if all the wineries wanted to be 100% Texas, that they could do it?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
Does Texas grow enough grapes that if all wineries wanted to be all Texas fruit, that they could do it?
Unfortunately, I do not have enough information to be able to answer that. I'm not sure if.
Okay, if the case is that we don't, because that is probably a good reason why a lot of grapes are bought outside the state, because Texas doesn't produce enough. And if that's the case, would you be creating a situation where the large wineries could buy up all the Texas grapes, virtually forcing the smaller wineries to buy only out of state?
I'm unable to predict if that would happen or not.
I would say that that would actually be good for the industry because economics works. And as the demand for Texas grapes grows up, I think you would see an increased number of, you're kind of helping make my point why this would help grow. And we're not requiring 100%, it's 75%. But yes, as demand for Texas grapes grow up, guess what's going to happen to that industry? The number of vineyards is going to increase because demand's there and prices are going to go up. So economics will work in this case. As demand goes up, price is going to go up, prices go up, more people will start growing Texas grapes, which is good for the Texas farm industry.
Okay, now I understand that side of the economics, absolutely. The other side of it is the unintended consequence going to be that some of the smaller growers would be forced out of the market and end up shutting down as a result of not being able to buy the grapes and thus not competing in that market because the larger ones bought them all up?
If that were to happen, those businesses would not be prohibited from still producing wine. They would still be able to produce wine just like they do today under their normal winery permit. But, I mean, if that did happen, then they would not be able to produce, I guess, Texas wine because there wouldn't be any grapes left. But they still would be able to produce wine in general, just like they could today under the normal winery permit.
But you're automatically giving them an automatic marketing boost by giving them 4 more free tasting locations. So
That would be correct, yes.
You're unbalancing the competition with that in favor of the large wineries at the sacrifice of the small wineries.
If that were to happen and they were to purchase all their grapes, then I would agree with it, yes.
I would say the intent of the bill is to give the industry a boost. You're correct.
Oh, I'm all for that. I'd love to do it.
I'm just
the thing that-
agreeing with you that it will give a boost to the wine industry in the state of Texas versus the wine industry in other states.
Actually, it gives the boost comes really for the fruit producers.
Right.
'Cause they get almost
Right,
get
the
a
agricultural
guar-
side we're
the
trying
other
to
side, not
improve.
necessarily the wine sellers. And I'm just concerned that we give the boost to the wine sellers at the expense of with the rails that are being put up and the benefits being given, that the small wineries are going to be at a disadvantage, only having to be able to have one location for testing, and then the ability of the larger ones to buy up all the grapes and to keep them out of that market, even if they wanted to try to get into it, until the fruit producers start producing enough, which in the wine business, that takes years for that to happen.
But typically that happens when demand grows, which is what this bill is seeking to do, is grow the demand. And you're right, the more we regulate, the more we limit permissive type applications in the industry, the more we will limit the growth of Texas vineyards. And so, I mean, you're right, the less flexibility we allow, then the less growth we're going to have in the industry. So you're correct on that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Senator Hancock, any questions for the resource witness? Very well. Thanks for being here.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your testimony. We'll open invited testimony. The chair calls John Rivenberg. And we'll open public testimony after we hear from Mr. Rivenberg. Welcome, have a seat, and when you get situated, introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you so much. Chairman Hughes, distinguished members of this committee, I really appreciate this time this morning to talk about an issue that's near and dear to my heart. I'm John Rivenberg. I'm the president of Texas Wine Growers. I'm here today to express my strong support for this House Bill 3385. As a seasoned industry professional for nearly 2 decades, I've experienced a lot of growth in this industry. Today, I sit here also as the owner of Rivenberg Wine, Texas's first wine incubator. In that time, I've started and developed over 33 wineries and been involved with planting over 1,000 acres of grapes. I've also had the privilege of sitting on just about every board in the state. I've been on the TDA Council. I'm the current president of Texas Wine Growers. I've been on Texas Hill Country Wineries as the president twice. Many years ago, I also sat on the TWIGA board, Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association. So I feel like I have some pretty representative knowledge and experience to speak on these topics today. This bill represents an opportunity to develop a comprehensive growth pathway for Texas, and not for one region, but for across the whole state. We've got vibrant things happening in East Texas around sparkling wines with Blanc de Bois that's being grown. Those guys have really jumped up in the last couple of years with some innovations that are pretty amazing, creating almost a champagne region of our own. We've got the Texas High Plains, which for over 30 years has developed and grown the vast majority of Texas fruit. And then we've got I wouldn't call it up and coming, we've got the region of Texoma. We've got some great friends up there that are growing beautiful fruit. I call it the fertile ground. We just planted a small vineyard in a little town called Tolar, which I know isn't Texoma, but a little south of there, and I'm very impressed with the grapes that are starting to be grown there. We've had lots of growth opportunity in the last few years, and something that stuck out in my head is last year we had 4,000 tons of grapes estimated that we dropped on the ground in Texas because we did not have enough Texas operators buying those grapes, not because of quality, not because of price, but simply because we didn't have enough operators looking to use Texas fruit. This bill and this legislation will foster the economic growth around enhancing the reputation of Texas wine and give opportunities to large, small, medium-sized, old, new operators to be able to grow with the lessening of friction in the regulatory body that is currently in place. You'll hear from some of my colleagues today that there are lots of opportunities for people to move ahead, and I'm very excited to talk about those. This proposal reflects an ongoing effort to support agriculture, and that's our goal. The goal behind this, and after 20 years of my career, is to find pathways for people to buy more Texas fruit, make more Texas fruit, and not harm or hinder anything as it relates to the current industry. We're trying to create a place where we can all work together and grow the industry, whether you want to grow the industry under the G permit or you'd like to grow the industry under a farm winery permit and support and buy more Texas fruit. That's our goal. This bill is good for Texas farmers. This bill is really good for agritourism. And with a $24 billion industry just reported, I think this bill is just really great for Texas business. And with that, I yield to questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions for our invited witness? Senator Hancock, go ahead.
Yeah, if you would just put it in perspective, because with Senator Hall, when you say grapes on the ground, equate that to.
That's about a $52 million retail hit to the wine industry. If we, to answer a question that was asked earlier, if we, and again, we're not requiring people to buy grapes, but if we incentivized more Texas wineries to buy grapes through a farm winery permit, we would be in a deficit. So immediately you would see a massive increase in infrastructure and planting, and at the tune of anywhere from $15,000 to $60,000 an acre. That would be a great influx for Texas business to see more fruit going in the ground. Mathematically, over the years, I'm a little bit of a statistics nerd, we've shown that if we can get more people buying Texas fruit, we could systematically double, this is my personal opinion and just my own at-home math, we could double the wine industry in a matter of 10 years.
Senator Hall, any questions?
I'm getting confused now, because you opened up by talking about how many tons of grapes that had to be dumped because they weren't being bought.
Yes, sir.
So if you're already dumping tons that aren't being bought, what percentage of that is how? I can understand this would salvage what's already being produced, but I'm not quite sure, unless that's just like 1 or 2% of what's grown is being dumped, or is it more like 30%?
I would say it's closer to 25%, and I think part of that being is the fact that there's not an incentive at this point for growers to take the time and do the work, to look on the message boards, to look on the commodity boards that we have in place for fruit to be available. It's easier for them to call up a location that will bring case goods right to their door off a loaded truck and just not do the work. So that, quite honestly, we need a pathway to help continue to encourage, not direct, not mandate, but encourage people to buy more Texas fruit. So that way our small operators, I personally believe that this bill is perfectly suited for our small operators and startups to be able to have the ability to have more access to fruit and to have more ability to have multiple locations highlighting what they do.
And I would just point out, I mean, you got to choose your arguments. Either we have too many grapes or we aren't going to have enough grapes. And I think what we're doing is saying we're at a place that we're positioned where we have enough growers to encourage, through this, permissively encourage greater use of the grapes so you don't have a $52 million loss.
Yes, sir.
And set a runway that if it does take off, then it does provide time for us to meet the growing need because you can project that. And so, you know, it's difficult to argue we're not going to have enough grapes on one hand, so I don't like this bill, and then argue I don't like this bill because we have too many grapes. And so I think that's where we are. We're in a sweet spot of the growth is there. If we can encourage increased demand, then we could potentially have future growth in.
Yes, sir. And if I may add,
Which is what we've seen in other states, which is why the recommendation was in this report.
in 1994, Oregon had a very similar bill passed. Everybody knows about Oregon Pinot. Everybody knows about these wines around the world. We were the same size as Oregon as it relates to growing in that time frame. The other point, well, go ahead, sir. Oh, I would like to say that, just to add, when I started in this business, you had to claw, fight, and find growers to be able to supply Texas fruit. In my 20 years, I've seen our education system and our innovations around viticulture science get us to a point where we can sustainably grow and maintain a fruit crop with diversification. So I think we're in a great place.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so you represent the Texas wine growers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for our invited witness? Thanks for being here. You're excused.
Thank you for your time.
We'll open public testimony on House Bill 3385, and the chair calls Sammy Lamb, Karen Bonarago, Julie Herbort, Blake DeBerry, all right, we'll start on my left, your right. So since you're on the end of the table, you got to get close to that microphone. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Welcome.
Good morning, Senators. Is this good right here? My name is Sammy Lamb, owner and founder of Wonderless Wine Company, a small minority family-run winery in Austin. We're proud to be a Platinum Award recipient of the Austin Green Business Leaders Program, having saved over 500,000 single-use bottles annually through sustainable wine packaging and practices. I serve on the board of the Texas Wine and Grape Grower Association, and I'm pursuing the Master of Wine title to help bring global knowledge back to Texas and support the next generation of wine leaders through collaboration, innovation, and responsible growth. We launched right before the pandemic, and it was the existing G permit that allowed us to adapt and survive. Today, we operate 3 tasting rooms, employ over 45 individuals, primarily women and minorities, and are expanding our partnerships with Texas growers and winemakers to strengthen our local production efforts and scale our size and impacts. HB 3385 threatens the viability of that kind of model and the future of many others. This bill doesn't strengthen the industry, it disables it by introducing complexity where clarity is needed and by creating imbalance where equity should be prioritized. Let's be clear, it duplicates the G permit rather than building upon it. It adds regulatory confusion despite TABC's own sunset review calling for streamlining and permit reduction. And it offers a benefit, 5 off-site tasting rooms, that is cost prohibitive to most small and emerging wineries unable to absorb the financial burden of scaling at that level. Meanwhile, this bill doesn't address the root challenges facing in our industry: access to land, cost of grapes, distribution limitations, or the economic barriers that already make wine production difficult in Texas. Despite being called a farm winery permit, this bill provides no vineyard support, no grower incentives, and no meaningful farming infrastructure. At its core, it's a retail and marketing bill, yet even that impact can be questioned given its true value when compared to the already given Texas Department of Agriculture allocation of $250,000 annually to wine marketing, through SUSTA, Go Texan, and Uncork Texas initiatives. Wine in Texas has over a $24 billion economic impact to the state's economy, and that number continues to grow. And even if the percentage of Texas-grown grapes fluctuates, what we need now is a policy that enables that momentum, not legislation that limits access, narrows opportunity, or forces
Thank you for your
operators.
testimony. Thanks for being here. Welcome, introduce yourself. And I'm strictly enforcing the time limits because we have more bills than ever and more witnesses than ever. And we want to make sure that for everybody who's here, it gets heard whether you're for or against. Welcome, introduce yourself, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman Hughes and committee members, for this opportunity to speak in support of House Bill 3385. My name is Blake DeBerry. I'm the founder of Tornalox Vineyard and Winery in Burnett, Texas. I am the past president of Texas Wine Growers and currently a board member of Texas Wine Growers. Tornalox was founded about 10 years ago. This was a all chips on the table retirement project for me and my wife, so we put everything on the line.
Get a little closer to the microphone so we want to hear.
And, excuse me, our vision was to be Texas in Texas. Our winery sits in the beautiful hill country inside a 250-acre ranch with longhorn cattle walking around. Looks like a barn. We want to be a boutique vineyard and winery, so stay small. And we want to produce wines from 100% Texas-grown fruit 100% of the time. I was president of Texas Wine Growers when TABC came out asking about additional permits. As part of that position as Texas Wine Grower, I put a committee together of our members. We'd studied various permits through the nation, and we developed the farm winery recommendation for Texas Wine Growers that we submitted to TABC. At that time, I did reach out to the current president, Monty Dixon of Twiga, to try and get consensus with the group, as well as reaching out to Texas Hill Country wineries, and my efforts were rebuffed. The main thing that we wanted to consider with this bill was that it did not affect existing growers and G permit holders, and that's what it does. The bill does provide additional benefits to wineries, which have been described here, and I believe that it's fair that those of us who have dirt under our fingernails and wine stains on our hands should get some additional benefits. You may hear that this bill will create confusion or redundancy. It doesn't, because it's subordinate to the G permit. It's just an add-on that you can get with the G permit. You may hear that it fails to support small wineries. I am a small winery, and it does support me, and I look forward to the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Senators, sorry about my voice. Hi, I'm Julie Herbert. I'm the current president of the Texas Wine and Grape Association, and Twiga is the largest and oldest wine organization in the state of Texas with over 200 growers and winery members. Our board unanimously voted to not support this bill. And to those of you here, that might seem a little strange that the Texas Wine Board would not, or Wine Association wouldn't support a farm bill.
Get a little closer so we can hear you. Go ahead.
I apologize. But the statement on the surface is the problem. The core tenets of the bill have value, but it is vague. As a result, it leaves many questions unanswered and is open to interpretation, creating the risk it could result in more harm than help. In my daily work at our wineries, we live by the adage, the only thing worse than a well-implemented bad idea is a poorly implemented good idea. And because it doesn't work well, it sometimes ends up in a heap of trash, even though it's a good idea. I won't go through all the issues that the Twiga board has, but I will mention a few. We talk about the 75% rule, and what we don't understand is it 75% of what? Is it 75% of one bottle, one program, one vintage? It's just unclear, and we don't have answers for that. And then it also doesn't address if you're 75% one year, but then you go under 75% the next year, how does that affect you? Or is there a time frame you can be, it's a 2-year time period? We don't know. It doesn't address any of that. The bill proposes to help new wineries in the industry, including offering substantially lower fees. But most wineries, when they enter, because of the exorbitant cost of equipment and of a winery, with millions and millions of dollars, they do custom crush, and this bill does not address custom crush, so new wineries would not be able to qualify for this farm permit, so it wouldn't help new businesses coming in.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
your
for your time.
testimony. Yes. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Karen Bonarico. I'm representing Messina Hoff Wine Cellars, Inc., and I'm also the president-elect of the Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association, otherwise known as TWIGA. My name is Karen Bonarico, and with my husband, we are the second-generation owners of Messina Hoff Wine Cellars, Inc., which is a nearly 50-year-old veteran-owned Texas winery. Messina Hoff humbly started in 1977 in a mobile home, and we now have 4 locations, including in Bryan College Station, Fredericksburg, Grapevine, and Richmond, including 2 that are in districts of senators sitting on this committee. It is Messina Hoff and TWIGA's formal position that we oppose HB 3385, and we respectfully urge you to not have this move out of committee. Messina Hoff only works with Texas grapes, and we only make Texas wine. We have decades-long relationships with Texas farmers, and we truly want to see the industry expand. Over our 48-year history, we have single-handedly made more Texas wine than all of the wineries combined that are testifying in support of this bill. We care deeply for our neighbors. However, HB 3385 is not in the best interest of wineries and growers as a whole. We philosophically do not agree with permanently dividing the Texas industry, and that will be the result of this second unnecessary permit structure, in addition to continued divisiveness inevitably in years to come. This bill creates a duplicate marketing fund, as if we do not already have one funded with TDA, which we do. Adding another permit to TABC goes against TABC's sunset review process that concluded just recently and aggressively consolidated permits to streamline Texas wineries into only needing 1 permit. A small segment of the industry is driving the farm winery permit idea to self-servingly help their particular business models, much to the disagreement of the industry majority, as was recorded in the TABC winery study. We feel strongly that this bill was hastily filed at the legislature and that we needed to be able to have internal discourse to be able to discuss these issues as an industry without moving forward on this bill. We therefore request that you oppose HB 3385, and we greatly appreciate the time.
Thank you, and thank you all for your testimony. Members, any questions for these witnesses? I had a couple of questions. Sir, let's see. Could you repeat your name? I'm so sorry.
Yes, Sammy Lamb.
Thank you for being here. If this bill, you were opposed to the...
That's correct. I apologize. Strong opposition.
If this becomes law, how does this affect you?
Well, first of all, the premise of this is to fight the bill coming into effect because it limits free market, it limits innovation, creativity, and the ability for us to come together as an industry. How it was introduced or presented did not come to the consensus of the industry. It provided, while well-meaning individuals, a narrow perspective of how they can improve the industry. There are many challenges. There's a difference between winemaker objectives and wine grower objectives in the price of grapes, thus sometimes drops or potential market fluctuations. How it impacts myself, it's how do I, as a up and coming, I'm actually one of the younger voices of the industry, how do I navigate continuous red tape, continuous compliance, continuous obstacles, and bridge new opportunities that are inclusive, offer diversity, and offer a new way to bring wine to the table of our current generations, which is currently at the forefront. You know, the boomer generation that was sustaining the wine industry is slowly phasing out. And how do we, as the younger generation, bring new ideas, utilize the flexibility of the G permit to mitigate bad years, take advantage of good years, and bring new opportunities for new wine leaders? So
you use the term, I believe, in your testimony that this brings complexity where clarity is needed. Could you
that's correct.
say a little more about that?
I joined the board last year, and I inherited quite an interesting burden of trying to bridge generational conflict within the industry of how to push it forward, how to navigate it. It creates complexity right now. You know, this bill has, in a certain way, villainized anybody that opposes it instead of bringing new conversation and opportunity on the table. It creates complexity because now TABC, already an understaffed, underfunded department, is now going to need to enforce new policies. Currently, TTABC, there's a lot of red tape, it's continuous compliance on how to navigate all these things. There's no traceability right now on how you can actually know where grapes are coming from. So a lot of the bill's foundation does not have true a true clear path. So just as Julie mentioned, it's a great business pitch without a business plan at this point.
Okay, thank you. Senator Hancock, you're recognized.
I appreciate your challenges. I don't know that this bill creates those challenges you talked about. I think that's just being an entrepreneur and being part of it as an entrepreneur. I'll speak on that. I don't think this bill improves or takes away from it. And as far as clarity, I think that's what this attempts to do, is provide clarity on, are Texas grapes being used, or are they not being used? So as an entrepreneur, I feel with you, how does this impact you? But those were typical entrepreneur challenges on how to keep up in an industry. I do think some of the things and questions and uncertainty were brought up. TABC kind of addressed that when they talked, but if the committee would like to bring them up, I think they could answer them, pretty much every one of those pretty quickly and easily. And as you know, when you pass legislation, the details, some of which were discussed, are always worked out in the rules as they go along. And hopefully, rather than staying on the outside, they'd be a part of the rulemaking process and have an impact.
Thank you, Senator Hancock. And I'll just address this broadly to anyone who might have some thoughts on this. You brought up there's not really good traceability of grapes right now. Do any of you have anything you could say to explain that, how the traceability works right now, or lack of traceability works right now?
Well, there is no traceability as far as the TABC is concerned. That's not anything they look at right now. We do have reporting to the TTB.
Oh, and state your name.
I'm sorry, Julie Herbert.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Keep going.
So we do have to do different types of reports for the TTB, but under TABC, there is not any reporting at all where you talk about where the grapes were grown.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Hancock, you're recognized.
Just saying, that's probably a question for TABC.
Okay.
Would be better able to answer that.
All right. And could our resource witness from TABC, we've got a chair just sitting there for you. We'll go back to that question in just a second. And ma'am, you mentioned this conflicting, go ahead and have a seat. You mentioned this conflicting with the sunset recommendation. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, so my name is Karen Bonarigo, for the record. Sunset happened with TABC a couple of sessions ago, and we actually, as wineries, we have our main G permit, but at the time, before Sunset, we actually had a number of subordinate permits that we also had to have to be able to do additional things and have additional rights for festivals, for agents permits, for traveling, for all sorts of storage permits, off-site. During the Sunset Commission, and I'm sure TABC can speak to this in more detail, they took all of those subsidiary permits that wineries had to get and consolidated all of those rights under the G permit. So at this point, we have a very consolidated, very efficient permit to be able to do everything that we need to do as an industry. It's very free market supportive. It's provided a tremendous amount of growth in the industry over the last 40 years. We went from us being the 4th winery in the state in 1977 to only having about 50 wineries in the 90s. Then we earned shipping rights, which was a big deal. Thank you to the House Legislature here, House and Senate, of passing that in the early 2000s. That was a game changer to be able to open up tasting rooms. And we exploded up to 100, 500, and now we have over 900 G permits on the books in the state of Texas. So that free market model of having it under the G permit has provided quite a bit of flexibility for us to be able to see tremendous growth, to be able to see those vineyards get put in that we need across the state. So we are already moving in a very positive direction. Our concern is creating a secondary permit that now defines and separates, and at some point probably will market differently between wineries, is in fact going to segregate the industry into different camps, which we find unacceptable. Philosophically, as one industry, we want to make sure that we're pulling together to be able to support our growers, to be able to support our business models, to be able to pass on lots of different types of great wines to our consumers. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that together, as opposed to creating two camps that now will be in conflict for the rest of time.
Wow, that's a big deal the rest of time, right? So are you saying that there was a move to consolidate things, and we got to a place where things were more coherent and all in one place, and now this is a move, in your opinion, to going back the other direction?
Yes, ma'am. It looks as though now we're going to start adding subsidiary permits again for different additional features that some wineries may be able to access and other wineries will not be able to access, which again creates separation at its surface level.
Thank you. Mr. Cherry, we had a couple of questions for you. Could you address traceability of grapes?
At the moment, that's not something that TABC currently does because we don't have a permit type that would require us to trace the grapes. However, if this were to pass and we had to go and do some sort of audit, we would then look at records to see where the grapes were purchased and try to track that backwards to understand were they grown in Texas, when did you purchase those, and look at the paper records to then determine, okay, were you buying Texas grapes and producing your wine from Texas grapes?
So we would need to create some sort of mechanism to trace grapes.
I'm not sure if we need to create a mechanism, but that would just be the path that TABC would go down to determine whether or not someone was in compliance with the law.
Okay. So we would need a new process in order to do that somehow or another in
Yes,
in
TABC would need to do something internally that is slightly different than what we currently do, just because this is a new authorization.
All the information's there. It's
Senator
not like
Hancock.
they're going to have to start something new. It's just tracking what they, frankly, my guess is you're already auditing the grapes and you're auditing where they're coming from and that they're using the type of grape they say they're being used. So you're already doing this audit. It just,
We do audits, but we're not looking at that. So I guess maybe I could phrase my response better and say we would be looking at a new and additional types of records than what the agency is currently looking at.
Okay, thank you. And then, do you have any comments on what was brought up about sunset, that this goes in a different direction from the previous sunset recommendations?
Yes, well, one of the stated goals when the agency last went through sunset review was to reduce the amount of permits and licenses and certificates that we have, but that was for the agency and within the alcoholic beverage code as a whole. It was not specific to the wine industry.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll just ask this again broadly. Does anyone have any of the statistics regarding the percentage of the Texas wine sellers? I guess I'm using that term in the broadest sense, the people who sell wine, whether they produce their own grapes or they import the grapes. But does anyone have a breakdown of the percentage of Texas wine sellers that use their own grapes or use Texas grapes versus import the grapes? Anybody have a number on that? Just within the industry, the percentage currently. Okay. Well, that'd be a good thing for us to know. All right. Thank you. Sir?
I was going to say it's a hard question.
State your name.
Oh, sorry. Once again, I'm Sammy Lamb. It's a hard question to answer because of how big our state is and how big the industry continues to become and grow, traceability challenges. When we speak about Oregon or comparing ourselves to other states that are doing something similar, we're 2 or 3 times the size of their mass, and also in terms of traceability, when you're supplying grapes from different parts of the state, figuring out where they're actually coming from, especially along the borders of, for example, New Mexico or even Mexico soon. There's a lot of questions of where that comes from. To your earlier question about complexity, it creates a lot of challenges for up-and-coming emerging wineries like myself to be able to grow a path of a non-estate winery, which is very cost prohibitive, especially in today's day and age with high costs of lands. So to get creative and to be able to make an impact and drive, change through our passion, we have to be realistic and figure out how we can engage other people in the industry within our state to do, for example, custom crush contracts. If we were to enforce a bill that could, for example, as Senator Hall mentioned, create a lack of competition or potentially put us in a bad disadvantage of negotiation. Now there's a war between wine growers and winemakers, and then the price right now for me, for example, to acquire certain Texas wines is around $25 a gallon, which is very high compared to what one can be making on their own, for example, but there's a lot of costs associated. So as an emerging winery, you have to navigate the realities of the market. And I feel, my final statement is, I feel that this bill is unnecessary. This needs to be more of an education and marketing effort within our own internal industry versus bringing legislative action to the discussion at this time.
Senator Paxton?
Thank you. Yes.
Julie Herbert.
State your name, please.
Julie Herbert. I would like to say, I don't know the exact percentage, but it is a majority of the wineries in Texas that use Texas grapes or use some portion of Texas grapes. And I think that this bill is really probably directed at the wineries that come in and they bring in wine from another country and they buy cased wine or shiners and they put their own label on it. I mean, that's very upsetting to a lot of people. and I see it all over social media all the time. But a majority of the wineries in Texas use mostly Texas grapes or some portion of Texas grapes.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And sir?
Blake Berry. I just want to address the audit and traceability. You know, we produce 20% of our wine is produced by our state vineyard. The other 80% we buy from the high plains. Everything that we harvest, we know exactly how many tons we harvest. If you're a good grower, you have to know that. You got to know the tonnage you bring in because that's part of the chemistry of how much wine am I going to make off of this fruit. We have absolutely crystal clear records for that. We have to have that to meet our TTB requirements. When we buy fruit from the high plains, we get a bill of lading saying we shipped so many tons of this variety. We have those bill of ladings in our records. We can absolutely tell you the source of the fruit for our wine, not down to what vineyard it came from. This is not anything that should be difficult for a winery to produce for TABC. And I think it's just good winery practice to keep track of those records. I think everybody up here would agree that we got to know where the fruit comes from.
Well, it sounds to me like individual wineries are keeping track of that, but we're not necessarily keeping track of it as an industry in Texas, maybe is the difference. Yes?
Well, and Karen Bonarigo, if I can add some context on scale, however, on grape traceability. So for us as a winery, for example, yes, do we keep records of all of those things? But I don't quite think that TBC understands the magnitude of records that would be required to go through in order to actually prove a percentage of 75% on an individual winery. For example, if we pull in 155 lots during the year, which includes about 20 sheets of paper for each lot that comes in. And then we blend them into different wines as we go through the years. And then we put it in a barrel or a tank, and then we hold on to it in a warehouse. And then we compound that with additional vintages that are aging and then for sale. You now have multiple vintages, multiple statuses that are pending at any given time, some in gallons, some in bottles, different units, lots of paperwork, including that. And in some cases, like our portfolio, we're selling wines all the way back to some of our late 1990s wines. So realistically, if we were to try to determine if we were 75%, which we know that we are since we only work with Texas wines, but realistically, if you had someone that was not doing that consistently, and that we're selling a product line that deep, which we do have some very large wineries in the state that may be in that case, you would be talking about probably pallets of paperwork that would be required to go through, and that is a level of audit that I'm not quite sure we have a format to be able to handle at this particular moment.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Senator Hancock, did you?
Do other states do similar things in tracking?
I cannot speak to, Karen Bonarigo, I can't speak to other states. TTB does do it, and TTB does it in a quite extensive process.
It was y'all's recommendation, so.
It's my understanding that other states that have a farm winery permit have mechanisms built in place to be able to track and verify that the grapes are meeting those states' requirements.
Do they have pallets of paperwork?
I've not heard anyone say that they have pallets of paperwork, no.
And I would say, I mean, y'all been wanting kind of to bust through the cap of, 35,000 gallons? Would this bill allow you to do that?
Julie Herbert, what's the definition of 75%?
So, but that would be in the rules. That's how the rulemaking process goes, and so they could provide some flexibility. You would have input on that. In fact, the 75% could be negotiable if, rather than just being no's, people come to the table and we work there. It varies in different states. This is not new. This is permissive again, and it does encourage the wine industry in the state of Texas and the agriculture side of it as well. And so all of this is not new. Most of the states, in fact, I would say every state known for its wine has very similar permits available to them that are flexible and would aid those that are speaking against the bill that would love to break the 35,000 gallon cap, which would allow you to do it. So I think, our office is willing to listen and discuss, but you've got to talk to our office and not other offices to do that. And so that's what I would like to see. I wish it had happened before this hearing instead of just being no's, come in and discuss the bill and maybe where we could adjust it, knowing that you'll have a say with TABC in making sure that it's as workable as possible, because it's not new, it's not unique.
All right, thanks for that, Senator Hancock. We're going to go on and keep moving. We've still got more witnesses on this, and we've got lots more bills. So thank you all for being here, for your excellent testimony and preparation.
Thank you.
All right, the chair calls Kyle Frazier, Raymond Harvell, and Mike Nelson. Kyle Frazier, Raymond Harvell, and Mike Nelson. Y'all come on and have a seat. We'll go in and get started since you're here. State your name, your position on the bill, and then give us your testimony, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, my name is Kyle Frazier. I'm here on behalf of the Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association, and we are respectfully against House Bill 3385. And they took, I was going to talk about sunset, but they took that. So I do want to say this, that, and first, Senator Hall, I want to answer a couple of your questions. You were asking the amount of grapes as compared to the number of wineries, and do we have enough? And we have, and one of the other witnesses mentioned, we have about 900 G permits out there. A lot of that is, well, some of that is repetition. We have people who have more than one permit. And then there's also companies that don't make wine that have the same permit we do. Wine.com is a good example. People who make cider have the same permit that wineries do. So not counting those, there are approximately 500 wineries that actually make wine or attempt to make wine in Texas. The estimation is to meet the needs of most of those wineries, it would take about 14,000 acres of grapes. The last survey we had from 23, the end of 23, we were about 13,000 acres of grapes. So we're getting there, and that's a growth. About 7 years ago, we were about 5,000 acres of grapes. So we've had really nice, steady growth over the last 10 years, 10, 15 years under the current law. And it's been quite successful, and just for perspective, this body and the House, y'all passed laws, began with Senator Madla in 1999, 2001, that laid the framework for the Texas wine industry. Before 1999, there were about 30 wineries in Texas. Now we're up over at 900 G permits, and that is directly related to the laws that y'all passed over the last 25 years. You have created, and these folks that you've heard testify have taken advantage of it, the most liberal set of wine laws in the United States. And that's why it has become so successful. It is extremely competitive. And
thank you for your testimony. We're going to keep real tight on this 2 minutes, but we may have some questions for you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Please state your name, give your position on the bill, and state your testimony, please.
Thank you. My name is Mike Nelson. I'm with Ab Asterisk Winery in Stonewall, Texas. Good morning, Chairman, and esteemed members of the committee. Ab Asterisk Winery in Stonewall strongly supports House Bill 3385. I'm a native Texan. I was born in Dallas, attended the University of Texas at Austin for undergrad, and earned a Juris Doctor from Southern Methodist University. I'm also a Texas farmer and wine producer. My family owns a boutique-sized winery in the Texas Hill Country, and I farm 12 acres of wine grapes. We were named Top Texas Winery by the San Antonio Rodeo in 2022. We were selected as a winner of the Texas Department of Agriculture's Vintners Cup in 2024, and we've been among the top 3 awarded wineries over the past several years. All of that said, it is still a struggle to get our wines into the market in Texas and gain traction for the Texas wine industry as a whole. You may be surprised to hear that 97% of the wine consumed in Texas is from out of state. This is unfortunate, to say the least, given the high-quality wines being produced in this state, largely as a result of the hard work of farmers and grape growers who have honed their craft over the past couple decades. We need support to reduce cost, overhead, and complexity to enable us to get our wines into the market. This bill is good for small Texas wine producers because it reduces my cost and overhead in growing my business. It reduces the complexity of opening new tasting rooms, and it expands my business opportunities to sell more wine direct to the consumer, which is the majority of our business. It also reduces red tape and aligns with TABC's goals with regard to consolidating permits, as we just talked about. If we can support Texas local agriculture and promote Texans drinking Texas wine, we can keep more Texas dollars in Texas. This strengthens rural economies, it protects agricultural land, and positions our state as a national leader in wine production. Every other major wine-producing state in the United States have already taken these steps. They've seen benefits in increased jobs, tourism, and economic growth, and Texas should do the same.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Please state your name, your position on the bill, and we look forward to your testimony.
Chairman Hughes and esteemed committee members, my name is Anthony Harville. I'm a partner and the Chief Operating Officer of William Chris Wine Company in Hyde, Texas, and I support House Bill 3385. Our company manages 300 acres. We partner with and purchase Texas grapes from 33 Texas farmers. We employ 113 Texans. Last vintage, we processed 1,271 tons of Texas-grown grapes. We distribute across the state, but also to markets outside of Texas, including New York, Chicago, Florida, and internationally. We've been named to the top 100 list of world's best vineyards for 3 consecutive years, a first for any Texas winery. Last year, we had 7 permits. Managing compliance requires a dedicated staff member, costing us $65,000 annually, plus benefits. Each permit also incurs a $3,000 fee. As we plan to open 2 additional satellite tasting rooms, the regulatory burden will only increase. I would rather have this employee sharing Texas wine rather than maneuvering through government red tape. All other major wine-producing states have strong permitting systems that invest heavily in marketing, giving them a competitive advantage. HB 3385 is a crucial step towards simplifying Texas's permitting process, allowing our Texas wine industry to compete more effectively. In 2024, Texas farmers had approximately 4,000 tons of Texas grapes discarded or go unsold, representing a $50 million loss for local growers and wineries. Texas is the 3rd largest wine consuming state in the country, but only 3% of that is Texas grown. There's a significant market potential. I urge you to support House Bill 3385 to bolster our state's wine industry and support Texas farmers and winemakers. The G permit doesn't change. This creates privileges for Texas wineries. We already have to maintain grape origin records for TTB for the 75%. Thank you, Chairman Hancock, for supporting the bill. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions? Senator Perry, you're recognized.
Hey, Kyle.
Yes, sir.
You're familiar with my wine country. It's an interesting business. I mean, for those that don't know it, my farmer that's in my son's school has acres. He's a cotton farmer. They get up at like whenever the temperature and the humidity is just perfect. And it may be 2:34 in the morning, and that's when they harvest. So it's a really cool science. So I'm not really into this bill as far as I should be, but I'm going to ask the question because I know who you represent, and I see retailers. So is this a host? You know, back to the comment that there was 4,000 tons of grapes that were. The reason that is because wine consumption's way down because of disposable income. So that's not really reflective of an ag industry per se or the ability to park. People just go out spending money when their utilities and cost of living went up. That's what I've been told because all my grape growers had contracts that literally the industry was saying, don't bring them, we can't sell enough of it this year. So that's a different conversation. But what is it that my grape growers are calling me about that are saying, we don't need this?
First, let me touch just a little bit on the dropped grapes that you mentioned, and you touched on that. Worldwide, we've seen about a 25% down market in alcohol overall. Texas is no different. It's a perishable product. If you don't have tank space, you can't. It's not like hay that we can stack up in the barn. And so, and I'm not suggesting that it's okay for people not to pay their contracts, but that was the reality of the situation. You just didn't have any place to put it, and there was grapes on the ground. I think the fear and I had this conversation with your staff. There's some really nice, interesting things in this bill that could be very, very helpful. The execution is not very good, and I'm just being perfectly honest, and that's the fear, is that the way the bill is drafted, it is ambiguous at best, and it could be, I know you said we could work a lot of that out in rulemaking, but that is absolutely a miserable way to go if we can avoid it. And I would much rather see some specificity, and I think that's the fear, is that where do we go with this, and how exactly is it going to be interpreted?
So I'm going to interpret that to say you're not conceptually against where the bill's targeted. You're just not.
Yeah, I mean, the 5 tasting rooms, we've been talking about that for years, trying to do something like that. Y'all have passed the 35,000-gallon cap removal 5 times out of this chamber, and it always dies in the House. But instead of just doing away with the cap, they then added another cap at 105,000 cases, and I don't really understand why. And
so here's what I'd ask, and it's really late in the session, but we still in Senate can move mountains, and that's a good thing and a bad thing sometimes. But have you been inside Senator Hancock's office with recommendations or talked to his staff on how to, because I have the largest wine growing region in the Texas wine industry. And they're really unique, great people. But so I get wine in the sense that I understand where y'all's grapes come from, and I promise you there's not any of those grapes being imported to that farmer and then imported here from some other state. They do blend. I know wineries do use California when it makes sense, and they use them with Texas, and it's a really cool diversity there. But I guess what I'm asking is, my guys are not all in yet. So if there's something you need to get cleared in statute, and I know Senator Hancock here is a very rational guy, and he wants to get it right. He wants to be right. If you need something in there that can reflect something my guys could get comfortable with, I'd ask you to engage, and engage yesterday.
I think the basic fear, and it was touched on, is the additional permit. We have survived quite well under the G, and the atmosphere that y'all have created has just worked really well. If you look at the history of the alcohol industry, this is my fear, having watched this now for 35 years. If you look at the history of the alcohol industry, the various segments of the industry found ways to compartmentalize themselves and then keep everybody else out, whether it's the package stores or the beer wholesalers or the liquor distributors, and reduce competition. You have an open market, and it works really, really well. And I would discourage trying to change that with some segmented new permit. Now, if we can figure out a way to incorporate some of that in under the G permit, absolutely. I mean, I know we've got folks who would be very interested in looking at that, because, as I said, there's components of the bill that are very, very attractive. I would love to get rid of the 35,000-gallon cap.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perry. Senator Hancock, you're recognized.
So you're concerned with the language,
Yes, sir.
and you've been in my office.
Yes, sir.
Have you brought any language?
No.
What's that? You're concerned with the language, you're representing your clients.
Well, my understanding was, we were told by the supporters of the bill that there was no amendments that would be accepted.
They don't control the bill. You've worked with me long enough. When I have a bill, who controls it, Kyle? Whose bill is it? Is it theirs or mine?
Well, it's yours.
All right.
I understand that.
You're concerned with the language.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Have you brought any language?
There were some.
Have you brought any language?
No, sir. But there was. But what
thank you.
But there was another group who did bring language.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I appreciate your testimony. Members, are there any other questions for these witnesses? All right. We're gonna keep moving, but we appreciate you being here. You are dismissed. Cheers to all of you for coming this early in the morning. Thank you, Senator Hancock. All right, is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3385? Seeing none, public testimony is now closed, and the bill will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair. Chair lays out Senate Bill 2027 by Senator Campbell and recognizes Senator Campbell to explain the bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Well, I'm really getting an early start on this Senate bill. I thought that it was thought that the House version of this bill would be the vehicle for the issue, but that failed to reach Representative Hayes.
Senator Campbell, can you lean into that microphone?
I can.
Thank you.
Anyway, the bill failed to get over here in time, so we're taking up the committee. And Madam Chair, I've got a committee substitute.
Senator Perry sends up the committee substitute and recognizes Senator Campbell, and Chair recognizes Senator Campbell to explain the committee substitute.
Thank you. I'll just do the whole explain about the bill together, if that's okay. The committee substitute makes a minor and non-substantive change to the introduced version, but notably it increases the cap on mental anguish from $50,000 to $250,000. In summary, committee substitute Senate Bill 2027 amends the Civil Practice and Remedies Code to establish clear standards and reasonable limitations for mental anguish claims against funeral service providers. And we do have some witnesses to testify on this that will be better to explain it than I can. So with that, Madam Chair, any questions or questions can be asked of the witnesses.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Campbell. Members, any questions for Senator Campbell that just can't wait until the witnesses? All right.
Okay. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have education at 9:45, where I'm vice chair, and so if it's okay, I'll excuse myself.
Absolutely. Tell everybody I say hi.
Yes, we'll wait.
Right.
Well, we
Thank
won't
you.
wait for your
The
votes.
chair, we will open public testimony. And the chair calls Bill Valley, Charlie Ginn, and Jason Harrell, Gregory Compion, and Kristen Tips. Take a seat at any of these chairs. If you're on the ends, remember you'll need to lean in so that we can hear you in the microphone. And we're going to stick real tight to our 2-minute window. We deeply respect your timely testimony. Thanks for being here this morning. And let's go in and get started. We'll start on this end. We'll move all the way across, and we'll hold all of our questions until the end of the panel. Please introduce yourself, give us your position on the bill, and then give us your testimony.
Okay. My name is Bill Valley, and thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill
And lean on in there, please.
2027. We're in favor of it. I'm speaking on behalf of the Texas Funeral Directors Association and myself. I've been a licensed funeral director for 49 years. My entire career has been serving families in Texas and far West Texas. As a past president of the Texas Funeral Directors Association, I have crisscrossed the state and met many dedicated men and women who serve families with compassion and dedication. My testimony today is about a funeral home we have out in far West Texas and Alpine, Texas, which serves families in Marfa, Ballantyne, Terlingua, Marathon, Fort Davis, Presidio, Rio Dosa, and Van Horn. The area that these folks cover is sometimes bigger than most states. And we have one funeral director in that area. And if they have a death in Van Horn, it's 100 miles from Alpine. Then if they have a death in Big Bend, it's another 100 miles the other direction. This bill would allow this funeral director to manage their budget much better and allow us to serve families on a continuous basis. Thank you.
So you're for the bill, is that correct?
I am for the bill.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Thanks for being so timely as well. Give us your name, your position on the bill, and your testimony, please.
My name is Jason Harrell. I'm a second-generation owner and licensed funeral director of Harrell Funeral Home, a family-run funeral home that serves Austin and the surrounding communities for the last 41 years. Last year, I served as president of the Texas Funeral Directors Association, and I'm here today to testify in strong support for Senate Bill 2027. My mom and dad started Harrell Funeral Home when I was just a kid, and growing up in the hallways, running the hallways, mowing the grass, taking out the trash, doing things. It was growing up in that industry is what I knew, and Dad taught me a lot of just how to care for people, how to love people in their darkest hour. And Mom is still active. My brother works there, my wife, my sister-in-law. So we're family, caring for people, caring for other families. And what I know about this bill is, it's not denying any justice. It's ensuring Texas families have access to competent, caring funeral service providers and are not driven out of business by unpredictable liability and skyrocketing insurance costs. Without SB 2027, we risk creating a system where the only providers left standing are large corporations, while smaller, community-based funeral homes close their doors, hurting the very families we aim to protect. I believe this bill strikes the right balance between protecting consumers and preserving access to trusted funeral service across our state. I respectfully urge you to vote in favor of this important legislation.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself, your position on the bill, and give us your testimony.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Senators. I'm Kristen Tips. I'm the presiding officer of the Texas Funeral Service Commission, but today I'm here to testify on behalf of myself to talk about the last responders in Texas. Last responders or funeral professionals are essential in our community. Many small businesses, mom and pops, funeral providers are recognized as such, essential to public health, and always step in during times of crisis. Like first responders, last responders are included in emergency response plans and often operate under extreme pressure in mass casualty events and pandemics, working closely even with Chief Nim Kidd. In most states, funeral professionals have protections under the same protections as first responders and our medical professions as essential workers in Texas. They respond, we don't arrive with sirens, but we always show up day and night, 24/7, 365, and 366 on leap year. We can't be replaced by AI. We are EI, emotional intelligence. We respond in hurricanes, pandemics, and in the quiet heartbreak of everyday loss, our profession began to protect the living from the dead, the Black Plague. We are public health infrastructure, managing the spread of infectious diseases. Everybody that is in the chain of care of dead human remains, from medical examiners, organ procurement organizations, law enforcement, JP, municipal cemeteries, state cemeteries, all have immunity. We are the only group standing there with no immunity, the one next to the family. Trial lawyers now know this. They're exploiting that. We're easy targets to them, easy money, based off the condition of the remains in which we receive them and decomposition which we can't control. Family conflict and weather delays will cause us a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Thank you for your time and your service to the state of Texas.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Please state your name, your position on the bill, and give us your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Charlie Ginn. I'm the Vice President of Legislative Affairs for the Texas Trial Lawyers Association, and we are against this bill. Let's talk about this bill for a second. This is not a bill about disputes among families. This is a bill about the body. You know that because when you turn to the bill, the very first section talks about the handling of the body, the storing of the body, and the embalming of the body. There are a lot of good things about this bill. There is a heightened mental anguish requirement that takes it from the normal definition of a heightened risk up to a grievous emotional reaction. It also restricts who can bring these suits. So you have to have a special relationship with the deceased. But we're talking about bodies that have been lost, that have been left to rot in the sun, that have melted in coffins. We are talking about an investigation that was as recently as April 28th of this year, where there's an owner of a mortuary that is performing experiments on bodies and loved ones, cutting off heads, cutting off spines, cutting off arms. In Houston, where bodies are left out in the open with no AC. That was in April of 2025. In San Antonio in April of 2025, 2 bodies were switched. We're not talking about the exploitation of funeral homes. We're talking about loved ones who in their final time and seeking closure, when they open up a casket, like what happened in Houston, and the body had rotted, and the smell caused the family to vomit in the middle of the funeral. And when we have a cap of $250,000 or less, $250,000 or the average cost of the funeral times 3, whichever is less, that is not a reasonable limitation on what is happening. There are many good parts of this bill. My family owned and built a funeral home in Northeast Texas. I believe in what funeral homes can do, but this only protects those who are not giving the respect to the bodies and to our loved ones and family members that they deserve. I'd be happy to answer any questions about this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Please state your name, your position on the bill, and give us your testimony.
My name is Gregory Compian. I'm a licensed funeral director and embalmer since 1987 in the state of Texas. I'm the owner of Compian Funeral Home in Houston, Texas as well. Thank you, Senator and distinguished body, for having me and giving me this opportunity this morning. I guess one of the benefits, or maybe not a benefit, is serving last, is I don't want to piggyback too much on what's already been said because my colleagues have brought up some very great points. You know, this profession, as I shared with you, I've had the opportunity to serve on the Texas Funeral Service Commission. And right in 2019, I was appointed by the governor to serve as the presiding officer. And shortly after that, we had to encounter COVID, which was eye-opening for everyone throughout the whole world. Be that as it may, it was an opportunity that no one was really prepared for. But, you know, being a good operator and trying to put best business practices in place, we made some adjustments to ensure that we would properly shelter and never sacrifice the dignity of people that were under our care. The first wave came pretty hard, not prepared. Nobody was prepared for a pandemic. Then it slowed down. Then the second wave, it gave us an opportunity to get a little better prepared. You know, I think the funeral profession is, we're woven into the fabric of the communities in which we serve. And we do a lot for the community, within the communities. And it's a very honorable, sacred profession. As a small businessman, the cost of insurance is just really getting crazy. It's getting very expensive. And we try to be good operators by minimizing any type of liability. And this has nothing to do with this particular bill, but, you know, we're coming into hurricane season, your sign gets blown out. Rather than putting it on your insurance, you just replace your sign because you don't want to have a strike on your insurance and drive up your premiums. And all the other professions, many other professions, should I say, have this opportunity and are given this opportunity, and that's why I'm in support of this 2027. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions for this panel? Senator Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Believe me.
And speak into the microphone there, Senator Hall, so we can hear you.
I do understand the two divisions of our legal community out there on both sides of it. We've had multiple bills here of one group of attorneys going after the other side, and both sides with some legitimate concerns. But let me ask you here that are involved in this business, what was described as some of the concerns about things that have actually happened? Tell me how you would feel about holding someone responsible if it was your loved one that experienced what was described in terms of the rotting body and the other things like that. Would you think that a $50,000 cap would be a reasonable thing for what I would call extreme neglect? Now, I agree that there are things that happen that people get upset over. They don't like this, they didn't like that, and so on. Like the fender benders in the car. The fender gets bent, nobody gets hurt, but you got an attorney who comes in and makes $1 million case out of it. Set that stuff aside and divide it between the things that people just don't like and legitimate concerns where exceptional neglect took place that resulted in the family having to throw up over the stench or whatever it is, which has to be very rare.
Right.
I'd like to hear from each of you, do you feel that that's a reasonable, or should we find some way to divide this so that because this bill in overall discourages being competent in doing the job. It encourages neglect when you know there's not much can happen for doing it. So I'd like to.
There is quite a bit that can happen. They can.
If you can state your name too, as
Kristen Tips.
Okay, thank you.
The licensees can go to jail they can lose their license. There's a lot of things that can happen to them, and this bill does not cover anything malicious. It is simply for the mental anguish. It is for those, there's like nuisance cases. Sometimes we can settle them before they go to trial. But the trial lawyers like taking them to trial because they try the case on the death itself and maybe not what happened that made them say we want to have a lawsuit. There's been a lawsuit for someone that saw a psychic after their loved one was cremated and sued the funeral home because their spirit was trapped in the crematory, is what the psychic told them. A municipal cemetery has immunity. There's a shallow buried urn in porcelain there. Another funeral comes, they go to open the grave, they hit that. Well, the municipal cemetery is the custodian of the records, of the burial grounds, of everything. Who gets sued? The funeral provider. They're the only ones standing there with zero legal protections. But we can go on. There's a lot of incidents like that. But if something is done maliciously, gross negligence, that's not part of this very narrow mental anguish. And I believe that there was some collaboration with you all at some point with Representative Hayes' office. You talked about there in the House, and it does bring the cap after they're talked to $250,000.
Can I respond to that, Senator?
Sure, I'd like to hear from each one of you on this because I want to make sure we understand the need for, I understand what you're saying, absolutely, and that's what I was trying to point out, that you have those things that are just plain oopses that don't really have much impact. And then you have other things that occur because of gross negligence.
Well, let me clear that.
Go ahead.
There's one thing I would say, Senator, is that...
And if you can state your name
yes,
for the record.
Thank you. Sorry. Charlie Ginn, Vice President of TTLA Legislative Affairs. A couple of things about this bill. In addition to the cap, which I want to set aside for just a second because it's the lesser of. It's not a cap of $250. It's a lesser of 3 times the cost of the funeral or $250. And that's a separate point. But when you look at this bill, in addition to that, to describe the concerns that I've heard is not a gross negligence standard. It is a heightened standard for mental anguish, which is really the only type of damage someone will have when a circumstance like this happens. And to ensure, under this bill, which I think is good language, to ensure that somebody can't complain about the funerals or who got grandmother's ring or the flowers or the arrangements. It ensures that it has to be someone with a special relationship to the deceased. It outlines that in the bill. And it also raises the mental anguish definition from the normal definition that we would normally use in a civil suit, like a car wreck case like you described, to a much heightened version of that. And so that, when it reaches those two, I would call them thresholds, right, that ensures that the type of lawsuits, when you're dealing with mishandling of the body to that degree, right, that's why it makes sense to include that language. But the problem with that is if you've met that threshold, if you've met the threshold where you open the casket and your body's rotted, or like some funeral homeowners, I understand, where the body is lost, it is gone. To this day, we have no idea where it is. And that's my wife, that's my mom, that's my child. That's not a $250,000 case, but I have met the threshold because it is a close relationship to me and it has prevented me with this mental anguish, even with the heightened definition, has prevented me from having the closure and the peace that I know wonderful funeral services can provide. That's built into this bill already. The caps are the problem. That's the issue with it. I'm sorry. Thank you for allowing me to explain.
I understand that. And I understand that this situation is like many others we have. You've got a wonderful organization out there that 90-some-odd% of the time, everything is done beyond the expectations of the folks. And then you have these few cases out there. And on another bill we had, you mentioned about selling the body parts. We've got other bills that are going right now where we have people that are doing just that. And that's the kind of thing that we want to make sure that the unintended consequences of protecting the funeral homes from when it's not reasonable but when it is something that it doesn't restrict it also, because I am all for protection against unreasonable lawsuits of things like that, so long as we leave the door open when there are, and I'll use the word malicious, selling of the body parts or losing the body or having the wrong body in the coffin. Some of those things would, we don't want to shut the door on that. And so if we need to have language that makes sure we cover both sides of that, that's the point I'm coming from. I recognize the need for the protection, but also we got to make sure that we don't end up doing like we did in the medical community when we overreacted with the caps that were put on for damages for medical malpractice that now truly hampers those who are damaged. We don't want to see that happening here. So I'm glad to hear from anyone else.
Gregory Compian, Senator, you bring up a very good point. And I don't think there's anyone here in the profession that would not believe in accountability, by all means. With that said, from my perspective, I'm just a funeral director, but just from my perspective as a businessman looking outside, it seems to me, it's been my experience, should I say, that lawyers look at what your caps are in your policies. And then they look at who your insurance carrier is. And a lot of times it's a twofold deal. A lot of your insurance companies feel that it's less expensive than to go to trial than to write a check. And now we have no control over that, but unfortunately, some of these lawsuits are nuisance lawsuits, which ultimately, then when you have a strike on your policy, more than likely you'll get dropped. You'll pay high premiums for the next 4 years if you can get insured. And that's the part that I'm bringing up as a small business and some of the things that we are encountering as small business. But for myself, and I would speak on anyone here in the profession, we believe in accountability, and there are incidents such as that. But also, from the other perspective, I really think that if a lawyer looked at a particular case and there is no insurance, there's nothing there, they probably won't sign. But if you got a $10 million policy, they're going to want to max it out. And unfortunately, insurance companies, rather than go to trial, they'll write a check. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bill Valley, you made the comment, if it was my family. Well, whenever a situation arises, and in the 49 years I've been doing this, I've handled probably over 20,000 disposals, burial, cremation. I've had 20 locations at one time in eastern New Mexico and West Texas. I tell all of my staff, from the janitor to the licensed funeral director who's running the location, you need to be in that family's shoes. Anything that happens here, it's on you. Everybody at this location is responsible. You're accountable to that family. We're here to serve that family. We cannot make one mistake. But unfortunately, we're human, and mistakes happen. And when a mistake does happen, we do not let the sun set on that mistake. We confess what happened. We tell the family what we can do to resolve the issue. And I'll tell you, 100% of the time, it has worked for me.
And I have no doubt about that. And you probably, what you just said, could be said by the overwhelming majority of funeral homes. I have never, and I've been to plenty of them at my age, encountered one that I didn't feel that kind of compassion there. But I also know we've got the mistakes that are made along the way. And I just want to make sure that we don't do something that where there is a legitimate issue of malpractice that took place, that there isn't a legitimate path for reasonable settlement for those folks. And here, again, it is the mental anguish is the only place you get damage in something like this. And so if there are ways we could have this, because I know Senator Campbell really wants to get this bill right. I know her. And so I want to make sure that if you've got some thoughts on how we could do that, so we make sure that we keep that path open, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Members, any other questions for these witnesses? I have just one question. In the egregious cases that you discussed, Mr. Ginn, are you aware of any regulatory or civil repercussions, criminal repercussions that happened in those cases?
Did you say criminal repercussions?
Criminal, regulatory, or otherwise?
I don't know, but I can find out and I can get that information to you.
Thank you.
Some of these that I mentioned, Senator, are brand new. 3 of the
Okay.
cases that I mentioned happened in April. And so I know there's an investigation in Austin right now where the
Sure.
mortuary is under investigation.
That would be helpful. And Ms. Tips, you mentioned that there are in place repercussions for these kinds of actions by the industry. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yes, to become a licensed funeral director, you have to get a mortuary science degree, you've gone to school, the curriculum, pass a state law exam and a national board exam. You're held to a very high standard under the Texas Funeral Service Commission, Department of Banking, Department of Insurance, and the Federal Trade Commission under the funeral rule. So we are very highly regulated. You can lose licenses, you can go to jail, you'll lose your business, cemeteries can go into receivership, trust funds can go into receivership. The stakes are very high, and there is definitely ways that people can't just get away with something. Unlicensed behavior, that happens. When it does, somebody will be arrested for it, and it's a state jail felony.
Are you familiar with any of the situations that Mr. Ginn brought up? Like a body being left out in the heat and that sort of thing. Are you familiar with any of those situations?
I wasn't aware of the one out in the heat, but I mean, I don't know what the situation is or the circumstance. We just never know. Sometimes there's family conflict and someone said, we don't want you to go into this church with the casket, and the funeral home's stuck in the middle. So I would have to look at the details to be able to comment on it, and I'd definitely be happy to do that.
All right. Well, I appreciate, Senator Hall, your line of questions. I think all of us want that balance of making sure people are held accountable. Mr.
Valley.
Mr. Valley, thank you for your testimony. I just appreciate someone who still knows what the word confess means. God bless you for that. And I think that would work very well. Members, if there aren't any other questions, we'll move on. Senator Parker, you're recognized.
Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here today and testifying. Just a broad question, I guess, for the operators for a moment. It's a little bit to the side of the core issue here, but I think it would help us understand the whole dynamic of the space. What kind of increase have you all experienced in your insurance costs as individual operators over the course of the last, I don't know, let's say 2 to 5 years? I'm just curious whether or not your insurance costs have stayed flat, have they gone up? Just try to get a sense of that, obviously, as it affects the whole ecosystem that we're talking about here today.
Bill Valley, reviewing our budgets, I've seen a 20% increase in insurance cost.
Okay. Over what period of time, sir?
The last 3 years.
Over the last 3 years.
Significantly after COVID.
Very good. Thank you.
Jason Harrell, and I have seen my premiums more than double.
More than double?
More than double. And I know that there's reasons for that. We experienced some growth too, but I know that a lot has to do with, I feel with a lot of the claims, which is on top of just some of the growth we experienced.
It's all, like I said, it's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand it all. Right.
Kristen Tips, thank you for your question, Senator. I can tell you we've experienced, since an opinion that came out in 2017 from the Texas Supreme Court of Nelson versus SCI, we have experienced a 1,000% increase in our insurance premiums, and our deductibles have gone from $10,000 to $150,000. So that retention per one funeral service. And to give you an idea, Texas gives $6,500 for victims of violent crimes for the funeral service and the burial. $6,500. And the deductible's $150,000. There was a report in a local magazine that more than 40% of funeral homes can't even get insurance. And when they do, sometimes it's with high stakes like Lloyd's of London, which makes it difficult. This year alone, 7 funeral homes in small towns have already filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And when we lose another funeral home, we don't just lose a building, we lose public health infrastructure.
Gregory Compian, Houston, Texas. Our premiums have doubled over the past 5 years. Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Members, any other questions? Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
God bless you. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. The chair calls Lee Parsley and Tim Baker. Lee Parsley, Tim Baker. Lee, if you want to go in and get started, pull that microphone close to you, and then state your name, your position on the bill, and give us your testimony, please. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. Lee Parsley with Texans for Lawsuit Reform. We're in favor of Senate Bill 2027. As Ms. Tips said a minute ago, this bill really flows from the Texas Supreme Court decision of Nelson versus SCI from 2017. The Supreme Court said that if you've got a special relationship with a funeral home in regard to the burial of a deceased person, then you can recover mental anguish damages if they've mishandled the corpse. The problem is there are kind of no standards for either what a special relationship means or what the mental anguish is that you might recover for. So this bill creates those standards, because right now, without some standards, as you're hearing, these funeral homes are experiencing quite a lot of litigation, and it's driving their costs, and it's hurting many of the really small local businesses. They're really having difficult time staying in business and paying insurance. And so that's what this bill is really designed to do, and I think Mr. Ginn at the trial lawyers emphasized that. It creates some standards that even the trial lawyers think potentially are helpful right now for these funeral homes. What it does not do is kind of important as well. If you're in the funeral business and you tell someone you're selling them a solid walnut casket and it turns out to be fiberboard, then that would be a deceptive trade practices action. It doesn't ban that. If you run somebody over with a forklift during a funeral service, then it doesn't cover that either. It's this narrow thing just to talk about SCI versus Nelson, and which we think is a very reasonable thing to do, and in fact necessary for these particularly small funeral homes around Texas. Thank you. We're fully in support of the bill.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Please introduce yourself, give us your position on the bill and your testimony.
Senator Vice Chairman Paxton and committee members, thank you for your time and letting me speak to you this morning. My name is Tim Baker. I'm a 15-year licensed funeral director. I'm the executive director for Carnes Funeral Home. Carnes Funeral Home is a privately owned firm, been in business serving the community for the last 21 years. I am in support of this bill. Tort reform and liability protection for the funeral industry is critical at this point. The vast majority of firms in our industry are still independent mom-and-pop businesses and a vital part of their communities and a pillar of stability in the communities they serve. 76% of all funeral homes in this state are still mom-and-pop, privately owned funeral homes, and that is significant. The funeral industry is a huge part of providing public health. We are public health servants. That is our role, one of our roles. Yet, we still have no liability protection in that role. We are there to stand in the gap during pandemics, natural disasters, and mass violence events. And allow me to provide you an unfortunate example of that. Back in 2018, the Santa Fe High School shooting occurred. 10 individuals perished in that mass, unfortunate, violent situation. Carnes Funeral Home was the provider at that point and worked on behalf of the Galveston County Medical Examiner. We were on scene. We worked with the medical examiner. We worked with the local law enforcement. We worked with the FBI on the scene. So not only did we work the scene, if you will, but after the fact, we and other local funeral homes took care of those families. We helped that community heal, move forward, and come to terms with what had happened. So we are a vital part when those unfortunate things happen. We're a vital part of those communities dealing with, coping with, and moving beyond those type of unfortunate situations. Lawsuits have driven the cost of liability insurance premiums, which you've heard, through the roof, making it unattainable for many small firms. In addition, many insurance companies are now unwilling to provide liability insurance to the funeral industry because there is no liability protection.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Senator Hall, you're recognized for questions.
You've heard my line of questioning before. And the concern here is,
Senator Hall, can you pull that?
there's no question about the frivolous thing that some lawyers will pick up on and build it into something that says we got to put a cap on that. But we have the other part here that's not that. We have the lost body. We have selling of the body parts, and we know that's real because we've already had plenty of testimony investigations going on that that is a practice that seems to have, hopefully we're going to stop it, but it's growth, or let the body out to rot, or lose the body. So Lee, how do we address these issues so that our solutions are equitable and not just one sledgehammer that shoves everything down into the single category of we're not going to be responsible no matter how neglectful our action is. And I don't agree. I agree that those are the exception that happen, but we box those out of any kind of reasonable settlement for folks when we take an arbitrary single one-size-fits-all cap. How do we solve that?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I think we're in the same position on that. There are cases of negligence in funeral homes. There are things that funeral homes do sometimes. I can read it in the case law that you think, wow, they really messed up on this deal. And it causes people anguish. So I do think that you've got to define what anguish means in this context and what a special relationship means, who is entitled to pursue the lawsuit. And I think that's very reasonable, and it's not an immunity. It's just to say, here are some standards that the law must apply. The caps then are a little bit different concept, of course. Sometimes the caps make sure that everybody across the state and in all circumstances are treated similarly. And I think the law values that, and that also is valuable. So that everybody, when they've got a bad experience from the funeral home, society has said, you're entitled to recompense, but you're not entitled to 10 times as much because you're in this geographic area than that geographic area. So caps can serve a function that is meaningful to us if they're at the right level. And the right level, of course, is a policy decision for you all to make. But I don't think they are per se unfair.
I can understand geographic, but the difference between putting the wrong dress on grandmother in the coffin,
right,
or combing her hair wrong, is one thing. But selling the body parts, or losing the body, or leaving it out to rot, or some of the other things that have happened,
right,
that's what's not being fair with this bill. It puts them all in. There's no difference between selling the body part than putting the wrong lipstick on grandmother. And that's where we need to be more thoughtful in how we try to rein in the bad actors and minimize the cutting out of legitimate issues.
Yes, sir. And what I think you'll find is, of course, TLR is happy to work with you on that, but more importantly, the folks who are in this business, I think my impression is that they are very happy to try to find whatever middle ground you or the other members of the committee would think would be important, as long as they can get some hope for some relief, because they are an important industry for us, we believe. And so
absolutely, but they aren't, the funeral homes are not the only people that are in this bill. The families are in this bill.
Right.
And we got to be careful that when we go after trying to protect an industry, that we're not doing damage to another part that's a significant part of the industry. Your customers are a part of your industry. And so that's what I'd like to see some help on working on a bill that is fair to the entire industry, that includes the families. And I just don't think we do it with a single cap with no definition. And it's not the mental anguish that I don't know how you ever define what that is. But the behavior is the problem. The actions, the inactions, or the misactions that take place. And being able to distinguish the difference between the wrong lipstick and the body parts.
Yeah. So let me add one thing. I don't think anyone said that's meaningful to what you're asking. This bill does not affect the ability to punish the funeral home through punitive damages. So if it is egregious conduct, then this bill doesn't affect the ability to punish through punitive damages, which some of what you're describing, I think, is sufficiently egregious that the funeral home would be liable for punitive damages, which of course would be appropriate. So this is just the mental anguish element of it.
And maybe there's a way to put some of the words into this bill to make sure that that's what happens, not just assume that it does.
I understand.
I'd love your help in doing that.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Thank you. I appreciate that discussion. And that does bring up, I think, a lot of what I was thinking about. This is, the punitive damages is not what this bill is really addressing. But I appreciate your comment there for clarification, Senator Hall. Thank you. Senator Birdwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. I know I've missed some of the testimony, so I don't know what's already been said. Lee, do you know how the arrival at 3 times the amount for the service, or 50,000, was arrived at?
I don't have a specific idea about that. I think the committee substitute, they're changing it to 250,000 on that second element.
I didn't hear the committee substitute.
I believe it's what Senator.
That sounds much better to me. Not before the Supreme Court decision, I had a constituent issue in Tarrant County with a funeral home that had, and the D actually came to me because it was only a misdemeanor for abuse of a corpse. And I won't get into all the brutal details, but the funeral home had given the urn with the ashes, but then the family discovered that her body was actually still existing in the funeral home, and it was horrible. That is not a statement of every funeral home. I've got a lot of great funeral homes. In fact, one of them will someday, take care of me. But that was why I was wondering how we arrived, because what the family went through was before even the Supreme Court decision that said there's that, for lack of a better term, emotional contract, I think is the word you used.
Yes. So they have to have a special relationship.
Special relationship.
Yeah.
So the family didn't have any recourse because this happened before the Supreme Court decision. But in having that historical record in my district, that's how I was like, that for some of the most egregious things that family should have had the ability to do something more than simply, let's get the law changed to where it's a felony instead of a misdemeanor.
Right.
And of course, that can't be done in arrears, but thank you, Lee. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Birdwell. Members, any other questions for these witnesses? Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate it. You're dismissed. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 2027? Hearing seeing none, public testimony is now closed, and the bill will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 3053 and recognizes the Senate sponsor, Senator Hall, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Today I present House Bill 3053 by Representative Wes Verdell. This bill safeguards the Second Amendment rights of Texas by prohibiting local governments from operating firearm buyback programs. Across the country and in Texas, we are seeing a growing trend of government-sponsored efforts to diminish civilian firearm ownerships under the guise of crime reduction. HB 3053 adds Section 280.005 to the local government code, prohibiting cities and counties from adopting or enforcing any measure that organizes, sponsors, or participates in a firearm purchase program, seeks to remove firearms from lawful circulation, aims to reduce civilian-owned firearms, or offers an avenue for individuals to dispose of firearms without fear of criminal prosecution. Members, Texans have a right to keep and bear arms without being shamed, pressured, are misled by ineffective government programs. HB 3053 is a necessary guardrail against misuse of a local authority, and I respectfully request your support for HB 3053.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Members, any questions for Senator Hall on House Bill 3053? All right, no questions. We do not have anyone registered to testify on, for, or against. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3053? Hearing, seeing none, public testimony is now closed, and the bill will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair. Senator Parker, you mind if we get the dean real quick, and then we'll come to you next. Thank you. All right. You have a preference?
2294.
All right. The chair lays out House Bill 2294. The Senate sponsor is Dean Zaffarini, and recognizes the dean to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members, House Bill 2294 is by Representative Zenfronia Thompson. It relates to reimbursement rates for child care providers participating in the Texas Rising Star Program. Members, all child care providers in the Texas Workforce Commission's Child Care Services Scholarship Program must participate in the Texas Rising Star Program. The Texas Rising Star Program offers 3 levels of quality certification, 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star, to encourage child care and early learning programs to attain progressively higher levels of quality. Although the Rising Star Program is intended to offer higher reimbursement rates for child care providers based on their quality rating, providers in low-income areas face significant challenges. They must keep their rates affordable for their communities, and TWC cannot reimburse them beyond their published rates, which are based on the market rate in the relevant geographical area, often a low-income area, even if they provide high-quality care. As a result, providers in low-income areas receive low reimbursements regardless of quality, often eventually resulting in their having to close. Generally then, House Bill 2294 would provide workforce development boards the flexibility to reimburse TRS providers at the maximum rate for their quality rating, regardless of their published rates. This, however, would be permitted only if it does not reduce Texas Workforce Commission's average number of children served each day for children receiving subsidized child care in the area served by the relevant workforce development period. And we should have a resource witness.
Thank you, Dean. Members, any questions for Dean Zaffarini on House Bill 2294 by House author Zenfronia Thompson? All right. We will open public testimony. Chair opens public testimony and calls Kim Coffran. We also have a resource witness here from the Texas Workforce Commission, if anyone would like to have them. Dean, did you want to have the resource witness? All right.
We need her.
Kim Coffran. All right. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Go on and introduce yourself, give us your position on the bill and your testimony.
Great.
2 minutes, please.
My name is Kim Coffran. I am the Senior Director of Education for Children at Risk, and we support HB 2294. So good morning, and thank you, Vice Chair Paxton and committee members for hearing this bill. Thank you, Dean Zaffarini, for your leadership around HB 2294, and Senator Birdwell. This bill emerged from a child care interim charge from the Lieutenant Governor that talked about addressing the child care issues and staying within existing resources. This will help reduce child care deserts and provide more flexibility to local workforce boards to meet the employer's needs. Since 2017, our organization has been tracking child care deserts across Texas, and today we've identified over 850 child care deserts for low-income working families. In all of your legislative districts except 2, you have lost child care subsidy seats, in some cases as large as a 43% decrease. The Texas Workforce Commission's Child Care Services Program provides scholarships to low-income working families to access child care, while participating child care providers receive a reimbursement rate based on an annual market rate study. However, the current reimbursement model creates a gap in funding. A high-quality child care program in East Texas may be able to charge $50 a day for an infant care and receive the full $38 reimbursement rate from the state. But another center in a lower income part of that region, where families can only afford $25 a day, will get reimbursed at that lower rate, that $25 $24 a day, penalizing providers who serve our most vulnerable communities and in reinforcing the childcare deserts that we are aiming to eliminate. House Bill 2294 addresses this issue by allowing local workforce boards the ability to choose to use local existing dollars and pair that with local dollars to ensure those providers in low-income areas receive that full amount and fill that gap. This is a simple but critical change to support child care providers, stabilizes the workforce, and helps ensure families, regardless of their zip code, to receive high-quality education. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions for our witness? All right. Thank you. You're dismissed. Appreciate you being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2294? Hearing, seeing none, public testimony is now closed and the bill will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair.
3697.
It's 3697. All right. Chair lays out House Bill 3697 by Representative Cortez and sponsored in the Senate by Dean Zaffarini, and recognizes Dean Zaffarini to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members, House Bill 3697 relates to the text on an application for a ballot to be voted by mail and other balloting materials. Members, voters with visual impairments have reported difficulty reading the instructions that accompany early voting mail-in ballot applications. Generally, the bill would improve the readability of early voting mail-in ballot materials, and there is a committee substitute that changes those, so I'll explain that if I can send it up.
Chair sends up the committee substitute to House Bill 3697 and recognizes Dean Zaffarini to explain the difference between the original bill and the committee substitute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members, this is really the specifics of the bill. The committee substitute was requested by the County and District Clerks Association and differs from the bill as filed in that it would prescribe the voting materials in at least 12-point font and in black text. I personally think it should be in 14-point, but if 12 is acceptable, that's fine.
I do not disagree with you. I think a lot of this stuff is a very disrespectful font size.
So too.
All right. Members, any questions for Dean Zaffarini on House Bill 3697? All right, thank you. If not, then the chair opens public testimony and calls Susanna Carranza. Dr. Susanna Carranza.
24.
All right. It does not look like she's here, but she is registered for the bill, and we'll acknowledge that. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3697? Hearing, seeing none, public testimony is now closed, and the bill will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members, and Senator Parker.
Thank you, Dean. All right, Senator Parker. You good with 640? All right. The chair lays out House Bill 640 by Representative Bumgarner, and the Senate sponsor is Senator Parker. Recognizes the Senate sponsor to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to come out here this morning and lay out House Bill 640. House Bill 640 is a simple but very important clarification to the election code. It addresses confusion among local election authorities about what constitutes a regular business day during election periods, particularly when those days fall on recognized holidays. A constituent of mine, a city secretary, raised concerns about unclear laws requiring election offices to stay open on holidays like Good Friday, unlike school districts which are clearly exempt, leaving local officials scrambling to interpret the rules. The reality is that many local offices across the state are already choosing to close on these holidays. This bill simply provides statutory consistency to match the practice already happening on the ground. House Bill 640 clarifies that local election offices may close on holidays that fall on weekdays during an election period, just as school districts already can. This provides clarity, consistency, and fairness to all election authorities and their employees. With that, Madam Chair, I'll conclude my comments. We might have some experts as well, but I appreciate the chance to lay out the bill.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Members, any questions for Senator Parker on House Bill 640? Seeing none, We will open public testimony. We don't have anyone registered to testify, but we do want to acknowledge that there is one witness, or one person registered for and one registered on. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 640? Hearing, seeing none, public testimony is now closed, and the bill will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair. All right. The chair lays out House Bill 4463 by Representative Van Dever and recognizes Senator Parker, the Senate sponsor, to explain the bill.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members, for allowing me to lay out the Bill 4463 by Representative Van Dever. HB 4463 modernizes Texas alcohol laws by allowing brewers and non-resident brewers to enter into contracts with one another for manufacturing services or to share facilities under alternating proprietorships. This provides critical flexibility for startups and small brewers to grow without needing to build new infrastructure. The bill requires that all parties involved in contract brewing or alternating proprietorships hold a Texas brewer's license at the location where services are performed. This maintains state-level regulatory oversight and accountability at shared brewing sites. 4463 authorizes non-resident brewers to engage in contract brewing partnerships with Texas brewers and to transport malt beverages from any of their out-of-state locations without needing a separate license for each state. Key transport safeguards remain in place, including restrictions on tank car usage. It also protects the integrity of the supply chain by prohibiting non-resident brewers from selling into Texas unless they are the primary American source of supply for the brand. This ensures brand authenticity and a clear, accountable supply chain for Texas distributors. 4463 also confirms that a non-resident brewer acting as the primary American source of supply is considered a brewer under specific regulatory subchapters. This clarification reinforces their role under Texas's House laws and distribution framework. The bill authorizes the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to adopt rules to adjust, including by increasing licensing and renewal fees. This ensures that regulatory costs tied to expanded contract brewing activities are sustainably funded. HB 4463 fosters growth and innovation in the brewing industry by reducing regulatory barriers, encouraging small business development, and attracting investment through greater operational flexibility, promoting growth in the Texas economy. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for the chance to come before you. I know we do have some witnesses here today as well, I believe, for the bill, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Members, are there any questions for Senator Parker on House Bill 4463? All right, then we will move on to testimony. The chair opens public testimony, and we have two folks registered, or three folks registered for the bill, two registered on. And we have a resource witness. Matthew Cherry is here from TABC. Members, are there any questions for the resource witness? All right. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 4463? Hearing or seeing none, public testimony is now closed and the bill will be left pending, subject to the call of the chair. Yes, if I can do those.
The chair lays out House Bill 521 by Representative Guillen and recognizes its Senate sponsor, our colleague, Senator Baxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. For many Texans with disabilities, physically entering a polling place can be difficult or even impossible without assistance. And I actually have personal experience with this because this was the case for my mom in her later years. It was very difficult for her with her decreased mobility. While current law allows for curbside voting, gaps in the process have led to inconsistencies, inefficiencies, and in some cases concerns about election security. House Bill 521 strengthens curbside voting by requiring voters to complete a sworn statement under penalty of perjury, affirming they are physically unable to enter the polling place without assistance or risk of injury. This ensures the accommodation is used appropriately while maintaining accessibility for eligible voters. And we can all understand a situation where there's only a couple of places usually that are allocated for this curbside voting, and someone who is just using it for convenience rather than the actual accommodation makes it an unfair sort of thing for the person who needs the accommodation. This form must be submitted to the Secretary of State and made available for review by the Attorney General. Additionally, House Bill 521 clarifies that an election officer who delivers a ballot to a curbside voter may not assist in marking the ballot unless there is a second election officer present, just like inside the polling station. So this is to make it apples to apples. This maintains the integrity of the voting process by ensuring that assistance, when needed, follows proper legal procedures. The bill increases oversight by requiring individuals who transport 7 or more curbside voters during early voting and election day to complete a form with their name, address, and type of assistance provided. This form must be submitted to the Secretary of State, made available for review by the Attorney General. The bill also brings the same logic to inside the polling station by requiring anyone, including election officials, to sign a similar form if they provide voting assistance to 7 or more individuals in the early voting period and on Election Day. The form must be also submitted to the Secretary of State, made available for review by the Attorney General. Knowingly failing to complete the latter 2 forms is a new offense, a Class A misdemeanor. The bill preserves curbside voting access for voters with disabilities while adding safeguards to prevent misuse. It clarifies election officials' responsibilities, requires documentation for voter assistance, and strengthens enforcement to uphold public confidence in the electoral process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for your consideration of House Bill 451.
Thank you, Senator Paxton. Members of the committee, any questions for our colleague on House Bill 521? Very well, we'll open public testimony. The chair calls Dr. Susan Carranza and Carrie King. I'm sorry, Susanna Carranza, there she is, and Carrie King. Those are the only 2 witnesses that we have registered, expressed a desire to testify. If anyone wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 521, please come down. Well, there's Ed Johnson. Mr. Johnson, the dean spotted you. Come on down. Hold on just a second.
Sorry.
I'll call on. That's okay.
Did I not get registered for this one?
All right. Very well. So, Dr. Carranza, welcome back. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Hi, I'm Dr. Susanna Carranza. I'm testifying against the bill on my behalf. This bill is unnecessary. It puts extra hurdles in the curbside process. It's really like forcing a person to sign an affidavit to say, yes, I indeed cannot go there. It's actually can be intimidating and prevent folks who really need it to not use it because they might be afraid. It's really, to me, it sounds petty. I work the polls. It's like, yes, it takes a little bit more work to serve curbside voters, but I don't know why we're wasting time and resources with making the life of poll workers also harder, because even though you say it's going to reduce the number of people using curbside, the extra paperwork they have to force people driving and assisting, it's also more paperwork that the poll worker has to handle. And I don't know, more forms, more oaths for a voter just trying to vote and then not be harmed or having a terrible day. You just, I don't know. I don't know why we waste so much time on bills to make my harder to vote. I urge you to oppose this bill. I just don't even have what else to say. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Mr. Johnson, you know after you testify, we'll need to get that card from you so we have you in the system properly, and unless you've already registered but weren't going to testify. But welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ed Johnson, here in support of the bill, also representing the Harris County Ballot Security. I will tell you, I think this is one of the best bills we've had for helping disabled people with the voting from their vehicle out in the car. Working elections, I have seen this numerous times where, well, let's start here. As an election worker, you're told in training by the Secretary of State and by the ADA Association that you're not allowed to question anybody's disabled ability. So if someone drives up and says, I want to curbside vote, you can't question that, you just provide the election equipment. This process of providing this election equipment probably takes about 10 times longer to vote a person curbside than it does in person. Plus, you have to take 2 employees out of the voting area, out to the car, which slows down the process inside the voting area of voting. I have seen this happen where people come up, you know, with their Uber driver or whatever, and they don't want to leave them and get out of the car, and they'll just say, oh, I want a curbside vote. And there was nothing wrong with them. They just didn't want to have to leave the car. Or you have campaigns that think they're shortcutting the line. There may be a little line there, and they'll drive people up and say, oh, we'll just curbside vote, you know, so that you know, I can go get more people, or, you know, come pick them up and you can just cut in line. And this actually disenfranchises everybody. You know, if there's a disabled person, which I've seen some veterans that really like to go out and participate that are disabled, and you have people like this that are not taking advantage of this, now that disabled person is waiting hours in their car to vote. Asking somebody if they're disabled to make that statement, I don't think is a very big issue. You know, a disabled person would be more than happy to say that statement of, yes, I am, and then be able to provide them and where they get put in the front of the line.
Thanks for your testimony. Any questions for Dean Zaffirini? You're
I
recognized.
have one question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the situation where let's say that there is an elderly couple and one is incapacitated, but the other is not, but doesn't want to leave the spouse in the car, would the person with a disability vote curbside and the other one have to go inside to vote? Or would
No,
that
I
person also
don't
have to
believe
sign a
so that
form?
that's in this bill, because they are a custodian of that person. So they would qualify too, because they can't leave that person in the car.
But under this bill, would that person have to sign a form, which perhaps wouldn't be 100% truthful?
I'm sorry, I can't.
If this bill were to pass, would the spouse who is not completely disabled have to sign the form, which would perhaps not be 100% truthful?
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that them having the responsibility of the custodian of somebody qualifies them under the Disability Act to be able to curbside vote.
Okay, that's something we might want to clarify. We might want to work on clarifying that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Senator Paxton.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's a great question, because that would be something that would happen probably quite a bit. I know that when I would take my mom, I would just go at a separate time for me, right? I would take her to curbside vote for her, but I would go at a separate time for me, and I didn't mind that I was out running errands and that sort of thing. So what you bring up is certainly not, it's not the intent of the bill to make something more complicated for a couple like that it really would be more convenient for them to both do that at the same time, and I'm happy to look at some language to make the clarification. I also wanted just to point out that there is nothing in this bill that is about reducing the ability to curbside vote for people who need to curbside vote. This is not about that. It is about making sure that it is exclusively available to people who really need it.
That's right.
So thank you. I appreciate your question.
Senator Hall.
No, it's good. A good question, good response. The second part of it is one person can be with one disabled, one person in the car, not one disabled and 4 people. So it'd be one person.
That are all voting.
As far as the custodian who would be accompanying the person and would be qualified?
One.
Can I make a comment on that?
Mr. Johnson.
I would look at that. Sometimes you do have nursing homes that come to a polling location with a van or a bus, that you would have more than one disabled person in there.
Any other questions for these witnesses? Thank you both for being here. You're excused. And Ed, make sure we get you registered on this bill. Thank you. And we got you, Dr. Carranza. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 521? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills left pending at this time. The chair now lays out House Bill 2253. 2253, Representative Bojani's bill, sponsored by our colleague Senator Paxton, who is recognized to explain it. How's that for a complex sentence introducing you? Go ahead.
Did a great job. Great job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Under current law, a political subdivision can only cancel an election if it is declared moot, a term that is undefined in statute. This leaves local governments without a clear course of action when a disaster impedes their ability to conduct the election and voters' ability to safely get to a polling location. House Bill 2253 addresses the gap by giving municipalities the ability to postpone specifically bond elections if a disaster declaration has been issued by the governor. So again, only bond elections and only if a disaster declaration has been issued by the governor. The bond election would instead be taken up on the next available uniform election date to ensure that voters have a full say on the bond measures that impact their tax bills that they would otherwise not have had if it were done during a disaster, because the presumption is that in a disaster there would be much suppressed turnout of the electorate. So thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for your consideration.
Thank you, Senator Paxton. Members, any questions for Senator Paxton on 2253, House Bill? Senator Birdwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Vice Chair, does the bill contemplate anything inside that 74-day? So if it's only a bond election, but assuming the disaster happens much more precipitated, does the county have the ability to postpone it without a governor's disaster declaration? Because that
it requires the governor's declaration of a disaster.
I'm really just trying to get in, not so much on the bill, but is there a gap that the bill doesn't address? So it's really more a general conversation. Mm-hmm. The example, when the fertilizer plant in West exploded that morning, had the election been that day, I don't have a governor's disaster. I don't have this current code, is there a huge gap between the election and the 73rd day?
I think that's a great question, and I'd be happy to work with you offline to make sure that.
Yeah, no, the bill's fine. I was like, you know what? Because I've had some disasters that were not.
I don't think that's what this is about. Right. That might be something else that would require some attention.
I understand. I was just trying to get what are we already doing?
Exactly.
If the disaster is at the apex of the election.
Exactly.
So,
thank you. I'll look into that for you, and I'll get an answer for you. Thank you.
Members, any other questions for Senator Paxton on the bill? We'll open public testimony on House Bill 2253. Is there anyone present wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2253? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed, and the bill is left pending at this time. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 3133. Senator Huffman is the sponsor, and that Senator Paxton sends up a committee substitute. We're on House Bill 3133. It's pending. We have heard the bill. Senator Paxton has just sent up a new committee substitute, and she is recognized to explain it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may recall from the original layout, House Bill 3133 adds explicit deepfake material to the list of content for which social media platforms must maintain an easily accessible complaint system. Following the signing of the Take It Down Act by President Trump earlier, we wanted to make sure that there are no conflicts with the new federal statute. So the application of this committee sub is that it removes the requirement that social media companies conduct a full investigation before removing explicit deepfake material, It allows for the restoration of content later determined not to meet the definition of explicit deepfake material, while also establishing a duty to prevent material that is deemed explicit from being reposted on the platform. And finally, the substitute clarifies the notice and reporting systems that social media companies must maintain for the identification and removal of explicit deepfake content. So again, this is really to just ensure that there are no conflicts with this new federal statute, the Take It Down Act, that was signed into law just earlier this week. The legislation will align Texas with these federal standards for social media monitoring and further protect our citizens from harm due to deepfake media. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members.
Thank you, Senator Paxton. Committee members, any questions for Senator Paxton on the substitute? Very well. House Bill 3133 will be left pending at this time, but we'll be looking for a vote on that one probably today. The chair now lays out House Bill 4995 by Representative Wilson, sponsored by Senator Schwertner, and recognize our colleague Senator Paxton to explain the measure 4995.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 4995 grants civil liability immunity to government units for incidents arising from the discharge of a firearm by tactical medical professionals, provides a defense to criminal prosecution for these medical professionals if they carry a firearm while acting within the scope of their duties, and it mandates that the Department of Public Safety establish training and certification standards to ensure their preparedness and accountability. Members, tactical medical professionals have become a crucial component of high-risk law enforcement operations, yet they are not clearly defined or recognized under current law. These professionals are often on the front lines during critical situations, such as an active shooter event or hostage rescues, where their expertise in trauma care can be life-saving. While legal protections are already in place for governmental units and certain first responders, these folks face legal ambiguity or delays in receiving necessary protections, potentially undermining their ability to respond effectively. It is vital to extend those protections to tactical medical professionals to ensure their safety and effectiveness in supporting public safety efforts. House Bill 4995 ensures that those that have a license to concealed carry may carry a concealed weapon with them for self-protection when they accompany law enforcement officers into a high-risk incident. It allows in-state tactical medical professionals, licensed physicians appointed by law enforcement agencies to support tactical units during high-risk incidents and situations, to carry handguns while performing their duties during high-stress and high-risk moments. It creates a training course for tactical medical professionals that is given by qualified handgun instructors with classroom training and field instruction. The bill requires physical demonstrations of proficiency in training techniques learned in training too. It provides that these professionals have a defense to prosecution under specific circumstances if they hold a valid, unexpired certificate for training course completion and the professional was actively performing their official duties in direct support of a tactical law enforcement unit at the time they were carrying the handgun. And lastly, it provides that it is enforced by the Texas Department of Public Safety in consultation with the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement to ensure maximum efficiency and quality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members.
And thank you, Senator Paxton. Senator Hall, you're recognized.
Yes. It's a good bill. I like the idea. But does this allow them, I know it talked about carrying them into a high-risk event, something happening, but seldom are those scheduled so that you know when it's going to happen. You get the call and off you go, which means if they're going to carry it, they have to have it already with them. So is this bill going to allow them to carry and be prepared to continue carrying the high risk? How does that work? What I was hearing, and I've read it, I haven't studied it that hard, but would this allow them to carry it even though the current event is not high risk, but they don't know that the next one won't be?
Thank you, Senator Hall. I'm honored to be laying this bill out for Senator Schwertner this morning.
Okay.
But we do have some witnesses who may be able to answer those questions, and I'm sure that Senator Schwertner also would love to do that as well.
Any other questions for Senator Paxton on behalf of the sponsor?
And yet, I just got this strong feeling and indication from Senator Schwertner's office, probably through Bluetooth or something like that, that the answer to your question is yes.
We'll open public testimony on House Bill 4995. The chair calls John Gonzalez, Doug Barner. Chief Gonzalez, Detective Barner are the only witnesses we have registered to testify on for or against 4995. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Hughes, Senators. My name is John Gonzalez. I'm the EMS Chief for Williamson County Emergency Medical Services, and I am here in support of 4995. I too, Captain Hall, think this is a great bill. Long time coming. We have had tactical medics embedded with SWAT teams for several years now in support of Williamson County Sheriff's Office, Texas Department of Public Safety, and the Central Texas Regional SWAT Team. And it does limit tactics to a certain extent by not being able to have that armed tactical medic in the stack, if you will, with law enforcement. It also does allow them to protect themselves and protect any patient that they encounter or they may have on any kind of SWAT call out. And to answer your question, we have been working on a protocol, should this bill pass, that our tactical medics will carry. It will be secured in a lockbox within the ambulance that only they have access to. And we have a strict protocol on how that would look. So to answer your question, yes, they would have that with them because this is a fluid situation. Anytime an event happens and they're notified, they need to be prepared and have that without having to deviate to retrieve it. So again, I think it's a good bill, and I think it's, again, a long time coming, and I appreciate your support of it.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Hello. I am Detective Doug Barner, Williamson County Sheriff's Office, one of the team leaders for the SWAT team. I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill 4995 to allow tactical medics to carry a firearm during tactical operations. This allows the tactical medic to have the capability to defend themselves and the defense of a third party. This frees up a SWAT operator also, or even two at a time, that are normally assigned to our tactical medics during these tactical operations. This is critical during active shooter and or violent crimes that require tactical operations. This just allows our SWAT team members more freedom instead of being stuck with a tactical medic during these critical incidents. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for either of our witnesses on this bill? Thank you both for serving and for taking time to be down here, or I guess it's down here from where you live too. All right. Thank you very much. You're excused.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 4995? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bill be left pending at this time. In a moment, we're going to recognize Senator, our colleague from North Texas, Senator Hagenbu, but first we're going to vote on some pending business, okay? As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 4749. That's Representative Landgraf's bill, sponsored by Senator Sparks. The Senate had previously passed Senate Bill 1888. That's about reconstruction of the petit jury will and grand juror, petit juror qualifications in certain counties. House Bill 4749 by Landgraf, sponsored by Sparks. Senator Perry moves that House Bill 4749 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 4749. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 6 ayes and no nays, House Bill 4749 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Perry moves the bill be recommended for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 621, Representative Patterson's bill, sponsored by Senator Hinojosa, our colleague, about the authority of a property owners association to regulate the assembly, association, and speech of property owners or residents, in particular government officials or candidates. Senate Bill 621. Senator Hinojosa moves that Senate Bill 621 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 621. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. 6 ayes and no nays. Senate Bill 621 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Hinojosa moves that the bill be recommended for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 3133. That's Representative Bajani's bill, sponsored by Senator Huffman. And Senator Paxton previously laid out the committee substitute and explained it to us. The committee substitute is before us. 3133. Is that okay? House Bill 3133. Senator Perry moves that we adopt the committee substitute to House Bill 3133. Is there objection? Hearing none, the substitute is adopted. Senator Perry moves that House Bill 3133 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 3133. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 6 ayes and no nays, the committee substitute to House Bill 3133 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Perry moves the bill be recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 201 by Representative Perez, sponsored by Dean Zaffarini. 201. Senators, it's about the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, which we're very proud of in Tyler. House Bill 201. Senator, actually, we're proud of it across the state, but it happens to be in Tyler. Senator Zaffarini moves that House Bill 201 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 201. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. 6 ayes and no nays. House Bill 201 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Zaffarini moves that the bill be recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. It is a no or it's not a no? Thank you. Ask a bad question. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 1506, Representative Ashby's bill, sponsored by Senator King. House Bill 1506. Senator Bardwell moves that House Bill 1506 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 1506. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwertner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. 6 ayes and no nays. House Bill 1506 will be reported favorably to the full Senate, and Senator Birdwell moves that the bill be recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 2885. That's Representative Gertis's bill, sponsored by Senator Schwartner. 2885, about the governing bodies of certain political subdivisions to call for a local option election related to the sale of alcohol. And we're going to call that up and then leave it pending for now. We may look at that bill later in the day. Got to have some. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 272. House Bill 272 is before us. To make sure we're clear, the chair lays out House Bill 272, Representative Perez's bill, sponsored by the Dean of the Senate, about the prosecution of fraudulent use or possession of credit card or debit card information. 272. Dean Zaffarini moves that House Bill 272 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll? 272.
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. 6 ayes and no nays. House Bill 272 will be reported favorably to the full Senate, and Senator Zaffarini moves that House Bill 272 be recommended for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. As a matter of pending business, the chair lays out House Bill 551. That's Representative Swanson's bill, sponsored by Senator Betancourt, about address information on reports of political contributions and expenditures. 551. Senator Zaffarini moves that House Bill 551 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 551. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, Hall, Hinojosa, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 7 ayes and no nays, House Bill 551 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Zaffarini moves that the bill be recommended for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. That concludes our pending business. Members, we're going to recognize Senator Hagenbu on his bill, and then we will adjourn. We'll stand in recess so that the Senate can come back in. Senator Hagenbu, come on down. And for our posted business, the chair lays out House Bill 1234 by Representative Guillen, sponsored by our colleague, Senator Hagenbu, our patient colleague. Senator, welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good to be here in your committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, for allowing me to lay out House Bill 1234. Under current law, an applicant for a handgun license can be denied based on a medical advisory board, MAB panel recommendation without receiving a clear explanation of a reason for denial or a formal opportunity to review or respond to the decision. House Bill 1234 would require that applicants receive a written notice from the Department of Public Safety explaining the specific reasons for an MAB recommendation to deny their handgun license. The applicant would have a 30-day period to provide additional medical records or other supporting materials for reconsideration. The MAB panel that issued the initial recommendation will be mandated to conduct a second review for any new evidence before making a final determination. This bill would improve fairness of transparency in the handgun licensing process by ensuring that applicants receive a clear explanation of the reasons for denial. It would give applicants a meaningful opportunity to provide additional information before a final decision is made. By requiring a second review of new materials, the bill would ensure that all relevant evidence is considered, protecting the applicant's right to due process while maintaining public safety. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, for your consideration of this bill. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for our colleague on House Bill 1234? Very well. We'll open public testimony and we'll ask, is there anyone present wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1234? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills are pending at this time. Thank you, Senator Hagan. Good to have you.
Chairman, thank you, members. Glad I could entertain you, Senator Birdwell. Do you always let your committee get a hand and insult their people who come here? Amazing.
It's a shame that folks are deprived of this.
It's a given.
I mean, they even give weapons to the Air Force, you know, I mean, come on.
Oh, now you've insulted me. All right. Thank you.
If there's we're about over halfway through our posted agenda. I think everyone at this point the Senate committee will be coming back after the Senate is done, either on adjournment or final recess today. And so with great thanks to the folks who keep us all running and our excellent committee staff, in particular, Committee on State Affairs stands in recess subject to the call of the chair. Good morning.